Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's my main man, DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What up, DB?
What's going down?
The rain, mostly, it seems.
I like it. This is nice. This is a beautiful day so
Got
far.
a little precipitation.
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Not too hot.
No, man, we had that stretch of like it being a scorcher.
Not too bad besides that.
But, man, at least fish aren't turning up dead in lakes and stuff like that. Man, we could be down in southwestern part of the country where it is hot.
Yeah, no.
That thing wet.
That's a pass.
No, that thing is it's dry.
Down there it's dry.
It's really dry.
It's wet outside.
Yeah.
But Southwest, you know, it's desert country out there.
And what did they do with all the dead fish and stuff?
I don't know. You can't eat it.
Oh, I know.
It was bad.
I know. But whatever, the heat, right? Lack of oxygen, fish just
just end up bubbling to the top.
Yeah, that's be mildly disgusting.
Yeah, not interested in that at all.
I used to think I wanted to be a parks and rec or like a
park ranger.
Yeah. Nope. Until
I'm trying to imagine you as a park ranger.
Well, it took me a second to figure out, like, you don't automatically know where you're going.
Well, yeah.
And there's just a lot of things that are like different than I thought, right? Like,
I can see that.
Thought it'd be a little more self-explanatory than it apparently is.
There's a lot going on there.
A lot of ground to cover.
Lot going on.
Like, I like animals. I don't like surprises. I think I'll pass. Go on to the marine biology thing.
I think there's too many people out there in some of those state parks for your liking.
Yeah, and it couldn't do the marine biology thing, so I was like, yeah, you know what? How about law enforcement? Be a profiler.
Yeah.
Yeah, ain't good either. What'd you decide on? Oh, kids. How'd you get there? I don't know.
A process of elimination.
Exactly. A lot was eliminated.
I don't know.
All that was after I wanted to be a garbage man.
Man, listen.
I still would probably not mind that.
I think I've always sort of had this kind of fascination where, like, it kind of seems like good work.
Yeah. And I mean, there are some days.
And you get compensated well.
Yeah. I just like the fact that it's a lot like I do this job, except I'm probably not supposed to. Like, kind of just in your own world and do your own thing. I mean, if you want to hop off that thing and dance, you can play music.
I feel like you
just like slinging trash. And now there's so many rules.
Yeah.
Do it like this, pack it like this, put it in this container.
Well,
like, I don't have to worry about some of the stuff that we used to do when we were younger that was just literally foul.
You also, at least, I think that all the ones in the city proper, they pick that thing right up for you.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah,
man.
You don't even got to pick up the trash anymore.
Just
got to line up the trash can.
Just imagine riding on the back of a vehicle, like just yucking it up.
I know.
I could do that.
You like toss an earbud in?
Probably not. I'd be the guy to drop them. Okay. I may have to get like
the wired ones,
Bluetooth, yeah, or wireless, like the little Bluetooth ones.
Oh yeah, like the headsets.
But do they need to talk to me? Do they need to be like, "Hey, DB, you knocked the trash can"? Nah, they don't actually care if they knock the trash can over.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You hop off where there's trash and then you pick it up.
That's what we're on today. It's cool.
I mean, I would imagine. I don't know. Having never been a trash collector.
In my former life, we had a great caller.
In sanitation, as they say.
Yeah, Bill the trash man.
Yeah.
Bill had us in stitches for like 2 years. Then we realized Bill's kind of out there. First story Bill told us is when he got out of the joint and how he watched television.
Yeah?
Yep. He talked about what kind of drinks he likes on Thanksgiving.
I assume adult beverages?
His daughter. He almost had to kill her boyfriend, fiance, whatever he was. Remember those days? Yeah, Bill. My mom loved her some Bill. Bill kept it 100. You always know what Bill was going to say.
Yeah.
But he was funny.
Sometimes people are real funny till you understand that they're serious.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh.
Yeah, I think
just going to back away from the table here.
Remember, Bill was like a younger guy, but he would always say my old lady. I kind of, I
think that might be a more cultural term than.
He's like, my old lady. And I just I'm like, would I ever say that? I don't know.
No,
I don't think so.
I feel like I would I feel like I would catch some garbage for that,
Yeah,
No pun intended.
potentially.
I don't think that'll go well for me.
Yeah,
well, and he was always finding stuff too. When you find like a '97 poster,
yeah, memorabilia. He might have been at your old place.
Over at my parents' place with all that stuff.
Yeah, man, dude found a lot of Husker memorabilia.
Dude, I saved so much stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah, some of that stuff needs to be in the trash.
Yeah, I got Wheaties boxes, got newspapers.
Probably keep those. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Nebraska will be right back there here in about a year.
On the Wheaties box?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Let you tell it.
I about 2 years. I said 2026.
No, I'm with you.
Playoff 2026.
They're coming. You keep watching Chasing 3 episodes. They might be in the playoffs tomorrow.
Man, so I think a lot of
I know you're giddy. I'm not trying to poke a hole in your balloon.
Oh, you can't. It's fine.
It's like sail away.
Listen, once I'm on something, I'm just on it, right? So there's not a lot you can do to dissuade me after that.
Yeah,
it's either stubbornness or conviction, depends on how you decide to paint that one. But so I'm watching.
My man said people that look like us don't call our wives old ladies. I think that's true.
That's why I said it's like a cultural thing. Like I think there's a certain segment of the population that uses that term.
What I like, my old lady. Nah, it just
doesn't sound right. I also don't do like the ball and chain thing.
What's that mean? Or what do you mean?
It's like I don't, how everybody's like, oh, it's the old ball and chain.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to joke about incarceration.
That's fair, but also I think it's like disrespectful to like your wife.
Yeah,
because it's like, no, if she didn't want to be here, like she wouldn't.
Yeah,
like I'm not.
A little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, it's not. It's not very nice.
Oh, Ravi here.
You know me.
Ravi here for kindness.
Oh, I'm nice to my wife. That's not a lot of other people, but
jeez,
my wife, my mom, and nice version of me, believe it or not.
My voice is starting to come back too, so let's go.
I know, but we were watching Chasing 3 last night, and
I think everybody was.
Oh yeah, but there's a.
Is it getting better?
The show.
Do you like? Is it?
The fall camp stuff is better for me. Like I like that stuff more.
Yeah.
When did they do it? Last spring?
Mm-hmm.
Like the spring stuff was fine, but the fall camp stuff.
Now you have like a frame of reference.
Yeah, and it's kind of getting me juiced a little bit because we're getting close, and so.
Yeah, next week.
I mean, we're right on it.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think people were really interested in the MJ Sherman part of things.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Because that's a guy, when he came in last year, everybody kind of looked at it. It's like, ooh, Georgia transfer.
We've talked about him ad nauseum, right? We almost left a lot of those guys for dead.
Yeah, which is a mistake.
And clearly,
we as a state, as a collective.
Yeah. Oh man, the SEC and blah blah blah. And it's not. And listen, college, that level, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard transition, and as you heard, a lot goes on in those transitions.
Yeah.
Right? You have to get acclimated. It's a different kind of culture, literally and figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
You're dropped in a new part of the country.
I say homesick.
I'm going to say, hey, man, thrive.
Yeah.
And it's.
Well, especially when you go to a place like Georgia, right, is they're not waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody, like some people need that little bit of time to adjust.
Right.
That doesn't make them a bad person. That doesn't make them a bad football player. They just need a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not afforded that. That's one of the better things about the transfer portal. I know a lot of people like to crap on it all the time. And they're like, oh, it's whatever. But
just take a great big duker.
Yeah, they don't, that's generally people talk about the transfer portal in a negative way when it talks about kids leaving for whatever reason.
Do you understand now why Coach Rule, when he famously said, the port giveth and it taketh away?
Yeah.
Right? He liked that two-way go.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. He's only been here a week. Does he understand what we're talking about here? It seems like he has a pretty good concept of it.
I think he does. But, there's kids that, whether they're just late bloomers, whether they weren't necessarily set up for success from either their high school or their home life or whatever beforehand, like there's a lot of reasons where guys don't just like pop right away.
Mm-hmm.
And at places like Bama, places like Georgia, places like Ohio State, you don't have the luxury of having a learning curve, really. You've got, you either are going or you're not. And I think that could work out.
Unless you're Carson Beck.
Right. Well, quarterback, you get a little bit.
Well, isn't that something that he hung in there?
Yeah, but I mean, nobody would have been surprised if he didn't.
Yeah, he almost didn't.
Right? Like nobody would have been surprised. Justin Fields is a great example of that at Georgia. Basically, everybody that they tried to bring in to unseat Stetson Bennett's a great example of that. Where Stetson Bennett, obviously, despite his lack of physical prowess, was a guy that could go in and function right away.
Where's the brother that started like 2 games? He couldn't throw it in the ocean, but he looked like $1 million. They tried to make him the starter like 2 years ago.
For Georgia?
Yeah. And then they had to end up going back to Bennett. I can't remember. But anyway, back to MJ Sherman in that Georgia environment, you were saying?
Yeah, well, I think there's certain places where it's hard to function if you're not 100% ready.
Yeah.
And the higher you kind of execute, like I'd like to think, not that Nebraska is going to turn into Georgia, but when Nebraska's winning again, I'd like to think that Rule's still going to have a place for guys that need a little time.
That's his personality,
right?
Though. Right. I like
that's what I mean. So it doesn't have to be that way when you win.
He doesn't come across all the time like this, but deep down he's a caregiver.
Yeah.
I think Coach Rule is still transitioning emotionally from Carolina. He's still recalibrating, in my opinion, his feelings from that stint in Carolina because it was so vastly different than anything he was used to. So
both from a lack of success and from a environmental.
Just the transactional negativity, not having very much control, like, having to cook other, meals that other people bought the grocery. Like there's just a lot, right? How his family was treated, what they had to read about. And so I think for him, like there's still a transition process. Like when he first got here, I was like, man, Carolina may have made him like hyper paranoid.
Yeah.
Right. But now that it's kind of regulating and it's going back to like his natural personality, he's seeing where those experiences fit and how to use them to be better going forward. So even that takes time.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows that. So I think
because you have to fit them in the context of what they mean to you personally before you can go out and have it mean
and give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it took me, like when I went through my divorce, it took me X amount of time where I had to figure out what it meant for me. And now
before you give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right?
Now it's like, okay, if now I have this life situation that I can use not only for myself as teachable moments, but for other people as well, and give some context and perspective there.
So I think that part of it, I think it's embedded now. I do. I don't think you'll have to worry about that going away.
The lessons from it.
Yeah. Like his ability, like his patience for people.
Oh yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? I don't think
when he talked about that with Joel Klatt,
right?
Where he goes like, I came back to college football for the relationships.
Yeah. That's it. Like that's him.
Like he said it out loud, right? Like he said all that. Whereas I came back to college football for the relationships. Yeah. Would have been really easy to go sit on his $9 million a year that Carolina was paying him, right? Not have to do anything, go do TV or something. Guess what he doesn't get to do in TV?
Yeah, he could have walked after it didn't really work out the first time.
Yeah. Like, it would have been really easy.
Yeah.
When that contract negotiation, Carolina wasn't playing ball, and Nebraska went to try and go get him, and they couldn't get it done at first, right?
Yeah. Would
have been really easy to say, like, you know what? I'm just going to sit a year. I'm going to go do TV for a year.
Yeah, for once, your guy showed some stick-to-itiveness and hung in there, and you won't give him any credit for that.
Trev Alberts? Yeah, he used it all up on that one time. That's all he had. I appreciate it. I'm glad he used it on a good one.
Nothing would please me more.
I'm glad he used it on a good one. But that was he's like a bee. Like he's got a single sting and then he dies.
You're a mean-spirited son of a gun. Boy.
I told you I'm nice to 3 people. He's not on the list. Him, Dion, and Bo Jackson not on the list.
Right. So you know what's funny watching that, and
there is I on Coach Rule real quick though. I do think there's a part of him that's not going to regulate kind of back to his normal self until he wins again.
Maybe.
I think there's
right there, like
he's proven it to himself.
Like that piece that's unleashed, and it's like, yep, I knew it.
Yes, like I knew I was good at this.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think there's a part of him.
I don't know.
I think there's
It makes sense.
It would be if it was me.
It makes sense, right? And he's not superhuman.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think
Because
his personality, like, oh, he'll figure it out. He always does. Right? Like we take some of that stuff for granted.
For sure.
But I'm sure he has to have
process.
Yeah, I'm sure he has some
prove it to himself. I think
know.
if I were him right now, I'd be in prove it to myself mode. Like I know I'm good at this.
Yeah. He asked me about a movie the other day, and it's probably more for it. I just think like his personality is, I think he wants everybody to know that he's like giving you O2.
Mm-hmm.
He's giving you an opportunity. And I think he's getting so good. He's so passionate about you being a better version of yourself. It's like his mission.
Yeah.
So everything, it's just like this, the essence of who he is. That's why he's like the king of second chances.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or he'll have the caveat, listen, I'll go to the ends of the earth for you as long as you're appreciative.
Yeah.
The minute,
or as long as
and
you
it's
keep
not
showing
because,
up
and it's not because he needs validation. It's because when you stop being appreciative of opportunity, you stop really wanting to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about,
and then like that's the total opposite of him.
well, and that's the point where you're like, okay, I can't help you
Yeah, I'm done. There's like I'm wasting my time.
Yeah, like if you aren't willing to be in this as much as I am,
Yeah, I'm wasting my time.
like I'm gonna stop showing up here because this is not a good use of my time. But it really wouldn't shock me if there's a part of him that's just like, all right, it's prove it to myself mode. Mm-hmm. And once he gets that, I think you'll see kind of full Matt Rule personality, like the full version of him. Because
just taking out the 2-iron and whack it in that thing.
Yes, but there was another part in
that chasing 3 didn't do Sad any justice. He's a good golfer.
I would assume so, just by the way he dresses.
He's a good golfer.
Like he dresses like he's always ready to go get 18 in.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like that would be, and normally people that like are always dressed like that are about that business.
Well, he is about that life.
So I just assumed Sat was good at it. He's kind of got the build, like he's tall,
little burner he hit.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, I would imagine Sat's good at golf. Yeah. But there was a part of the chasing 3 last night where Carter Nelson goes up and sings in front of the team.
Oh yeah.
I'll be honest, it was a little rough.
It's fine. I can relate. He's a great singer just like me.
He
isn't that right, Shane?
I appreciated his commitment to it. He's getting down on the one knee, he's getting after it.
Sometimes being bad is good, okay?
So I wanted to ask you about this because
what it's like to not be able to sing. Why would you ask me that?
No,
I'm a great singer.
I think you're a terrific singer.
Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement.
You're like Adam Sandler in The Wedding Singer. Just crushing it.
Do you really wanna hurt me? Right. Let's go, baby.
So a lot of times when I see stuff,
I'm gonna go ahead and bust it on down.
Nope, we don't need to do that. I'm trying to figure out. God, I hate that guy.
He is amazing.
No, he's the worst.
Yeah, he made some fried shrimp toast the other day.
Man, so I told you about the shrimp toast I had on my birthday.
It kept me up.
Oh man, I can't even describe it.
Let's go, baby.
I never had them. There's like 3 things that like V Mertz has made for me that I'm just like, I don't know what this is or how to describe it, but can I just eat all of this?
Yeah.
And never eat anything else?
That would be.
The shrimp toast was incredible.
Well, and you had scallops too. So
I know. I was like, could I just get the shrimp toast, like a whole plate of those, and just go ham? I was like, that would be a good birthday.
I'm just trying to tell you. So the chasing.
Yes. Yeah. So sorry, not to get distracted.
Carter Nelson is singing.
You distracted me with shrimp toast.
Let's go, baby.
So I'm watching this, and I always, when there's things that are sort of, and I know it's not unusual for this to happen in a football room. When I see things that I'm like, okay, what's the point of this, right? Like I saw on Instagram or not, Twitter, whatever, Jaylen Brown a couple days ago. He's like in a pool doing weights and he's dribbling a basketball underwater, and people are like, "Oh man, Jaylen Brown, he's coming." And I'm like, "How's dribbling a basketball underwater gonna make him any better at basketball? Like, really? How's that gonna make him any better at basketball?"
Okay, I don't want to derail the point, but
I mean, legitimately,
I think there's something to general resistance training.
In what sense?
Well, like controlling it with resistance,
Okay.
would lend itself to being much more manipulative in normal conditions.
Okay, like so you're basically adding obstacles
Yeah.
to. Okay, that's fair.
Just at its core.
Sure.
But not to get you off.
No, that's fine. But that's a. I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of had that moment with the singing last night because Coach Rule brought it up with Danny Kaelin,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see it with Carter Nelson, and I'm like, okay, what's the point of this? Like, what are we doing? Because I'm like, okay, are we just doing this to? And I think some teams probably do it just to like embarrass the young guys, whatever. But I was thinking about it. I actually think there's a real reason for it.
What do you think?
And maybe I'm giving Coach Rule too much credit here, but I think highly of him. I feel like it's sort of a way to break down the like too cool for school thing.
Yeah. And to know that you have to work through something in front of other people and it may
you're not going to be good at it.
You're not good at it.
And because like there's going to be a lot of times where you have to do things where you're not going to feel cool doing it. And 18 to 22-year-old guys famously not great at that.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting there, I go, it's actually kind of a genius way to get guys to be like, oh, like it's okay to look dumb in front of my teammates.
So do you know why I can say just about anything about myself, even though sometimes it could be embarrassing or not cool, or I'm like, oh shoot, I got to admit this?
Why is that?
Because I've had to go through it before.
Yeah.
And it was really, really uncomfortable. I've sat in a room with a professional, and he's like one of my great friends now. And I didn't say a word to him for almost 28 minutes.
Yeah.
Just me and him. I didn't say one word.
That sounds awkward.
Well, I was 21. So I was capable of doing anything dumb.
Yeah.
Right? But once that happened, like I could tell, we could have those conversations about the running back room.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, this is how I really felt. And I think that's part of it for those guys.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB being reckless out here.
That's what I do.
I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar.
I am reckless by nature.
If you weren't out here last night hanging out with Schick and Nick, you missed out.
How about those guys just pulling up, man? I bet Schick was like, not so much Nick, because Nick can kind of roll with it and be cool.
Yeah.
Not that Schick isn't, but he's a little more particular.
Yeah.
It's like, it was hot
yesterday.
And we're just kind of chopping it up outside. And all of a sudden, they're like, okay.
Time to go in.
Time to go.
Yep. Time to go in. Well, I think after they awkwardly hugged Shane.
Yeah.
They were like, all right.
Shoot. So,
because Shane's not a hugger, right? He doesn't like being touched.
No. Yeah. But, so, because Schick is very perceptive.
Yeah.
I think he felt like he was the one that got left out. So he wanted to bring him in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was a pretty good job, Shane, because
he did a little side hug. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
He was a little.
The little lean in.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Like, you don't want to,
A lean back. A lean back. Like that wasn't bad, Shane, because you don't like being touched.
Squad? Oh, come on, Shane.
But I think Schick felt like he had to make him part of the fam.
Yeah.
Because he was a producer for both of them.
I know. The OG.
Good job, Shane.
That's what we do here.
I don't even recognize what I was doing.
Place was deep.
Let's get to TK on the Hurrdat hotline real quick. Let's talk a little college football. What's up, TK?
Tomas, what's up?
Good morning, fellas. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
It's weird being here on time.
Oh. Doing well. About just lost my ACLs again to this dog. So
wait a minute, again?
Another day. Huh?
Again? You've had how many ACLs have you had?
Oh, none.
Oh.
I just made that joke before, so yeah. I don't like reusing material.
Oh shoot, man! I need a new job.
Listen, you're gonna be a lawyer. It's just called using precedent.
Exactly. There we go. Thank you. I'm glad one of our brains are on.
Wow.
Before I get into serious stuff, have you guys ever heard of a pork shank?
Oh, you talking about like the food, right?
Yes.
Yes. It's not a great Go ahead.
It's not a great quality of meat.
Yeah.
I had the best pork shank I've ever probably had. It tasted just like ribs.
So
in Wyoming.
Was it fancy like Osco Busco, or like was it like how was it done?
So it was like slow braised for a while.
God, it
and
takes
then flash fried.
It takes forever.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not a very fatty part of the body. It's like the forearm.
Who was making that? Did you ever see the episode in The Office when Michael had the dinner party? And he broke the TV and all that. Yeah, so that's what she was cooking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was using and remember Pam was like, "We're not eating until 9."
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, like it takes forever. But
I didn't take you for an Office kind of guy.
Dude, that show is incredible. It's one.
That's why DB and I still get along.
The Office is probably in my top. It's for sure in my top 10.
Huh.
I could watch a repeat this morning and laugh again.
Yeah.
It's still funny. But anyway, go ahead, TK. What's up?
So because I have a week off and I had to catch up on a lot of media on like a 20-hour drive, I listened to Josh Pate, and he brought up something I don't think I've ever heard about the new coaching assistant rules.
Yeah.
How they could potentially be more harmful to the group of 5 schools than the transfer portal.
Yeah, because they're pillaging quality coaches.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to keep up.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Stands to reason. But you know what's going to help so it all has the trickle down effect, right? So like with the scholarship limits and some of the things that it'll affect Power 4 or 2 or however many you think immediately, like everybody else,
better players down.
Everything else will trickle down.
Yeah.
Now the super marginal guys, like at the NAIA level or D3, like that may be where the bottom pans out, but for the most part, like you're going to elevate some good coaches that probably need an opportunity that otherwise wouldn't get it. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys make jumps in levels.
Yeah.
That turn out to be really, really good. So they schools may be more apt to do that. So that may be a good thing.
Yeah, maybe.
I wonder what it's going to do to the FCS guys. Are we going to see more and more like depletion from North Dakota State, and like they're already getting ravaged every year
on their coaching staff?
How long until they just can't compete anymore?
Well, think about it this way though, TK. Like kind of like DB was saying, like yes, their coaching staffs are going to get depleted. I also think you have to remember the way coaches think a little bit. A lot of guys want authority more than they want money, or they want influence more than they want money. Being an assistant offensive line coach in a power conference may not be as appealing to some people, especially if they've made a little bit of money, as it is to be an offensive coordinator at an FCS level or the head offensive line coach. And like at some point, job titles matter to advance your career. So I do think that's gonna happen at a certain point. But the other thing is, especially like the FCS level, if you've got a limit of 105 in the Power 4 conferences, you're actually going to see better level of players at places like North Dakota State and South Dakota State. Because, I mean, imagine the last 40 guys on Nebraska's roster right now playing at an FCS school. Like, you're going to have a lot of those guys trickle down to the other levels, whether it be Group of 5 or FCS. So I do think there is some danger of that, especially early on, as guys that have been maybe in the lower levels for a long time are like, hey, it's time for me to get a payday. But I also think in order to get advancement opportunities, guys will take, I mean, you see it in college basketball all the time. A high-paying or a well-paying high major job as an assistant pays more than being a head coach at a lower mid-major. But guys take those jobs all the time because they want to be a head coach, right? Yeah. I think the same thing's going to happen here.
You know, quietly, and I know he was an analyst, I think, for his dad at K-State, but like you get a guy like Devin Kleiman, who goes from Manhattan to North Dakota State, is like their new safeties coach. And I think they have a new OC and they have a new D coordinator, but like you'll see some opportunities now that I think wouldn't ordinarily be there because those aforementioned schools are getting their guys plucked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a little bit of a coming home party
Greater
for climbing, so
turnover.
I get that. But I tell you, I am all in on the random NDSU Colorado game because I'm telling you, I think NDSU is going to be good. And my man Sharmar Brown, Marty Brown, former Lowvite, former Prep Blue Jay, he may win that starting job.
Yeah.
We got Cole
I already put money down. They're going to win.
Really? What's the number?
Yes.
TK?
It's pretty small.
It's
like
6.5.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Really? That is going to be a grimy game.
You know which other one that I'm looking forward to is SDSU Oklahoma State.
Man, SDSU is serious.
Yeah, we're going to see
SDSU is really good.
Hey, listen, do yourself a favor and watch SDSU's defensive line. It's weird how those Dakotas got good in a hurry.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, North Dakota's good. South Dakota maybe back. Like, SDSU's been good.
And NDSU is the GOAT.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, don't tell that to SDSU.
It's just like Northwestern and Morningside. They have there's a lack of schools in that area and more talent than people know what to do with that people can't evaluate well. And so they just keep on getting the best players who just don't have quite the measurables to make it to the higher level.
Yeah, I think, and I appreciate the call, TK. You know, I think the unintended consequence is across the board, whether you're Power 2, G5, I think the way that you recruit, it's going to force you to do your due diligence even more.
Oh yeah, and staffs that evaluate well are going to have a huge advantage.
Yep. So you need some Listen, I saw a headline, man. I never thought I'd see it in college football, and I apologize for getting away from your chasing me. 3. Well, I used that in my tweet, so I had
Sorry about that.
Brain, and I know sometimes you do feel like you're chasing me, but that's neither here.
It's like chasing a squirrel.
Yes, whatever. Devil's in the details. A general manager of a college football team was practically in a bidding war, and he is going to make $1 million going from Michigan on the open market to a bidding war between SC and Bama. It's like he's good, apparently, but $1 million good.
I mean, when you're paying the head coach 7, 8, 9, 10,
fudge.
I get it's a lot of money, but it's also going to be an incredibly important position moving forward.
Yeah, especially for Bama.
Don't worry. We got Sean Patton. We're all set. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll wrap up hour number 1. We'll get back to Chasing 3 and MJ Sherman coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. As you're driving into work or wherever you're going this morning, and you got a little rain, a little precipitation, make sure you're focused on the road. Eyes and focus straight forward and ahead. As a driver, you've got one job, that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. DB.
What's up, bud?
You want to talk about MJ Sherman a little bit more?
you free booty.
Let's go, baby.
I'm going to have to fight Shane today. We were talking in the first.
# be kind. I asked one of my guys.
I love you too. We'll talk to you later.
I asked one of my guys yesterday. I was doing a walk by his classroom.
Yeah.
At the high school, and he's a special education teacher, so that's kind of I'm kind of always in that wing. And he's notoriously tough on his peers. So I mess with him all the time. And he has a # be kind on his door. It's big. His wife must have done it for him because it's like in this pretty script. And she's in education too. And I said, hey, man, how in the world do you have # be kind on your door? And you're you. And he deadpan straight face. He looked at me and he said, it's not for me. It's for people that come in my classroom. That's what makes me think of when you say, oh, I'm nice.
I'm nice to a very select few
It's
people.
all relative.
Yeah.
It was line of the day.
That's fair.
We needed a little levity yesterday.
Yeah, a little Will levity.
Yeah, big year for him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's good or not.
It's funny how you said that. I'm not sure they do either.
I don't think. Well, yeah, that's fair.
But they do have an upgrade on the perimeter, so I'll be curious.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure. I think.
Yeah, I don't know if he's good or not.
Well, I say this all the time with quarterbacks, right? Like context is really important in terms of.
Well, it typically is most of the time.
No, but
sometimes
I get
you just like it, sometimes you don't.
Fair, yeah, that's accurate. I like it when it suits me.
Wow.
I think there's a lot of really talented quarterbacks that never succeeded because of their circumstances.
Yeah. So which reminds me, that's like the chasing three thing, right? It's like I look at Judy's situation.
Like, do you think him and Sherman lack any physical talent that you would want in those positions?
No.
Right. So why haven't they been successful?
Right. I get it.
Yeah.
And it just made me think, and
that doesn't mean Georgia's a bad place either.
I look at Elijah's situation with Coda or his kiddo and Sherman with what he went through. And how about like this safe spot that's been created? And this isn't like DB here for toxic masculinity, but I am a guy that is not afraid to share.
Yeah, kind of put yourself out there.
Even when I'm, even
when it doesn't make you look great.
No, right.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So I always appreciate that, especially in young people, because I think you can't really establish any sort of meaningful relationships until you're willing to be hurt.
Yeah, to be vulnerable.
And listening to him talk, it draws people in from a leadership standpoint. Or when I look at a situation with Elijah Judy, and having a kiddo in college, which I couldn't imagine, right?
Yeah, it'd be really hard.
But so the first thing that I thought of, like watching these guys under this staff, was, man, I wish there were a couple of other guys in previous regimes that would have had these guys from day one. Because I go back to just what you were saying about the symbiotic relationship between OCs and quarterbacks and how that can matter. And we heard Haktua, whine about Brian Flores yesterday and the difference between he and
Mike
McDaniel.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some validity to that. Now, of course, I always want to hear from Flores or some of the other players because, I don't know if Tua's just being thin-skinned or he's legit, right?
And maybe Tua wasn't in the right spot to receive that type of coaching either.
Right.
At that time.
That wasn't a good season in his life either, right?
Yeah. Like both things could be true.
Right. Coming off the hip. Okay. So whatever. So I'm going back to, what's going on with this staff. And I'm like,
there's some guys you wish would have got a chance with.
Even
guys.
From a staff standpoint, like, ooh, what if Bill Callahan actually embraced the off the field stuff with young people to go with his football acumen? Or, ooh, what if Bo would have actually trusted somebody that wasn't in his, it's not even a circle, that was in his dime.
Yeah.
Right. Or, oh man, what if Jamal Turner
had played for this staff?
Would have played for this staff?
Yeah.
What if this staff would have got bets from the get-go?
From the start, yeah.
But one that really comes to mind, because he's just getting ready to move to Tennessee with his wife, because I think she's got a volleyball job down there where she's from. But I think of Chris Hickman.
Yeah.
Right? A guy that played early.
Largely forgotten, honestly.
Played early.
Yeah.
Remember,
he was very highly recruited.
And we used to get some. Why do they throw him those swing passes out of the backfield? Is he like a hybrid fullback, or what's his weight this year? Is he 200?
Yeah.
Is he 214? Is he 198?
Is he a tight end?
Right. And that was just a guy that was highly, highly, highly talented.
That couldn't really
physically, he was gifted, but just couldn't make a connection with being valued, right? And those kinds of things matter because everything else is already hard.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I caught my 7th swing pass out of the backfield against Purdue and West Lafayette. I'm just a young guy. Then the very next year, it's like, oh, let's go back to tight. It's like, wait.
Yeah, there didn't ever really appear to be a concrete plan for him.
So there's probably a difference in mentality between he and, like, let's say Bonner.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to just gauge like natural physical talent, I'd probably take Hickman.
Hickman, yeah.
But the staff can tell Bonner things, and he believes because of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, okay, that you think that's in my best interest? Oh, no problem. I got you.
Yeah.
Even if you don't love it.
100%.
Right? Because they trust.
You trust the people giving you the information.
So it's like
Jamal Turner is the first one I thought of.
I always think of like just having bona fide adults in the room.
Yeah. And people that not just adults, but people that have kind of the emotional maturity to meet people where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one, right? Like James Williams isn't going to work with every staff.
No.
He's just not.
And James Williams is in a vastly different spot than Elijah Judy.
Right? Well, a lot of people aren't putting James Williams up on stage.
No.
For a player panel.
Or in front of the press.
Right?
It's James Williams is in a dramatically different spot than Elijah Judy is in a dramatically different spot than Prince.
So you know what that says though, or like when MJ Sherman can talk like that. Mm-hmm. These guys are loving me right where I'm at, and they're still acknowledging to you. They're not finished products either, but they're still willing to share,
and they're still willing to work at it.
So it draws you in.
It does. The thing that got me about MJ yesterday was there were two things, and you kind of just touched on one of them. The first one was he was willing to acknowledge that what he thought he was as a football player coming into college, he has failed at.
Yep.
He thought he was a 3-and-done guy, go to the NFL. You know how easy it would be just to not say that out loud?
I know, man.
Just to be like,
I love it.
Just to be like, hey, yeah, my goal is still to make it to the NFL. Obviously, my journey hasn't been. He goes, no, I thought I was going to Georgia, playing for 3 years, going to the NFL.
You ever been in conflict resolution and ate something that you wanted to say because you know it wasn't edifying, or it was going to be not? It was going to help you, not the solution.
Yes, not the situation.
Yeah, so just eat it.
Yeah.
Like when you can process like that real time and with self-awareness, it's the ability. It's darn near the sky's the limit because people are going to want you around. 100%. They're going to want to be around you.
Well, and you're going to keep growing.
Yeah.
Right? Like for MJ Sherman to be able to say like, yeah, this is how I thought it was going to go. It obviously didn't go that way. That doesn't mean I can't still get to where I want to go. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I can't change my goals, even if it's still NFL, right? Doesn't mean I can't change how I get there. Like I don't have to be rigid in my thought process. If you're Elijah Judy, you're probably not thinking like, oh, I'm going to go Texas A&M and then wash up at Nebraska and not really know what my role is on this defensive line that people think is really going to be really good. And it's, like that's a weird spot for Elijah Judy to be in.
How do you get guys like Bair and Stanger to stick around?
And be productive.
Man.
Like not just stick around. Bair was productive.
I know. I bring up Stanger because he's everywhere. Yeah. Every time I watch the guy, he's running into something and it typically stops moving.
Yeah.
And people have been trying to run him off forever, right? It's like,
John Bullock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just pick a guy. Pick any of the. We were just about done with Ty and Nash going into last year.
Ben Hart for sure. We're like that way with Corcoran right now. Mm-hmm.
Like there's a.
And to be honest,
yeah,
you know who we haven't treated I don't mean to sound like a 10-year-old in fourth grade.
They didn't even mean to me.
You know who we haven't treated very well, understanding his situation?
Who?
Fedoni.
Yeah.
We have been hypercritical of everything he put in social media and because he would clap back out loud. Yeah. Like that's his personality.
He's not just gonna sit there and take it.
And remember how crazy he used to drive Coach Rule? Mm-hmm. But what did Coach Rule say? He reminds me a lot of myself.
Yeah.
Always got something to say. Sometimes you just have to like take it, right? So now that he's healthy and he's had an off season and they're still allowing him to be himself, he's going to flourish.
Yeah.
But you have to be secure in meeting him where he's at though.
100%. Well, and the same thing with like MJ Sherman, where he doesn't have to wonder. It's like, oh, are they only loving me because they think I'm the recruit
what they can get from me? Yeah.
Or do they love me because of who I am right now?
Yeah.
Coming up next, we're going to talk to Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by our friend from Husker 24/7.
No, he'll be here in a couple minutes.
Oh.
Did you not hear the 2 minutes?
It says Mike on the thing, so I thought.
He talked to us.
Oh, that's my bad.
Yeah.
Well, never mind. We're not going to talk to Mike then.
He said he'll be ready in 2 minutes.
I thought you said we'll be ready in 2 minutes. Like we're coming back in 2 minutes from the break.
Oh, Ray.
Misunderstanding. It was miscommunication. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
Tiger shark diaper.
It's fine.
I am not doing morning therapy, but I'm glad I'm here for it.
Listen, that's what I am here for. I'm just all these people out here listening to us that refuse to go to therapy. Like, you got to take your medicine.
Hey, which by the way, I made it through a half of Inside Out 2 again last night. But Zoe, she fell asleep.
I mean, you can watch it without her. No?
She can't not explain everything while it's happening.
She seems like the worst person to watch a movie with.
Dude, and it
seems terrible.
Yeah. She's like, do you like the way that Ennui, she's like not getting off the couch. She's just controlling the motions from her phone. I said, what are motions? It's and every time I see it, it's like I had a grown-up talk to us at Big Ten Media Days about this movie is like life.
Yeah.
What did he say? This movie isn't made for kids. I think it was made for adults. They just wanted to make money, so they said it was for kids.
That's because it's a lot tougher sell to be like, hey, here's your adult therapy movie.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, look at this kid's movie. It helps with their emotions. Everybody's like, yay.
Oh, she'll make better decisions when she goes back to her normal self. She just has to remember who she is.
Yeah.
I was like, huh.
That applies to more than just 6-year-olds.
Right?
Yeah.
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 Kind of like this guy here who I think is still in a relatively good mood after making his crunch wraps.
Yeah?
Yeah. He shows me a lot of cooking without an invite.
Mike's here now.
I think it might be a standing invite. Should I try to talk him into it?
I don't know. Let's see. We've got our guy, Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. What's up, Schaefer?
Oh, not a ton. Got that big 6-month appointment for Hudson right at 9 o'clock. So you need to call an audible on you guys.
That's okay. They're going to tell you he's in the 85th percentile, both length and weight. He's cooing the way that he should. They're going to ask you about his diet. You're going to say he eats like his daddy. He's fresh off a crunch wrap from last night, and they're going to be like, they're going to pat you on your butt, Mike, and send you on your way out. It'll be rainbows and butterflies.
I'd be pretty impressed if he got to 85% weight when he's been in the 30s for the last 6 months. So that would be. They'd probably have some questions for us at that point.
Hey, listen, I feel it's like the Minnesota Vikings. He's getting ready to take a jump.
Maybe is he in the strength program with Campbell and Coggins? Maybe that's how it happened.
I don't know. I think there's like a certain age you got to be in before they can let you in their program. But he's going to try to meet the frame requirements that they look for over there. The length isn't a problem for Hudson right now. We're a little thin, I guess, in the 30 percentile. So we'll see.
No, you are absolutely the perfect guy to ask, because some maybe have referred to as kind of a wet blanket sometimes. You're very unemotional unless you're triggered. Are you in on these Chasing 3 episodes?
I don't.
That's a no.
This is so Schaefer.
They're made for me.
That's a
but I
no.
do enjoy that they exist. Like it's a fun like look behind the curtain. It gives you an opportunity to see people's personalities. It gives you an opportunity to like experience what actually happens over there instead of concocting it in your own brain.
I don't know if it's made for me.
But yeah, I mean, it's a cool thing. I always get a little weird about it because it's like, you know, I mean, it's ultimately a narrative controlled thing. So how everything looks is kind of how they want it to look, and we know that Matt Rule is a little bit of a perfectionist in those regards, and so I'm sure he has very strong opinions on what's going to be shown and what's not going to be shown and everything like that. But ultimately, I mean, it's the best look that we have inside the program most of the time. So yeah, But I'm not sitting there Zapruder filming it for the 30 minutes that it's going on, trying to identify every single thing that's happening in these videos.
So, Schaefer, I think I understand from like a football standpoint. You're like, yeah, you probably can't glean much from it. But do you like the insight we get into some of these players' personalities that we probably wouldn't get otherwise? Like MJ Sherman, I thought was kind of the star of the one last night.
Yeah, I haven't watched the most recent one, but I do enjoy that because, you get these brief snippets or I shouldn't even say you. I mean, I get these brief snippets when we get the opportunity to talk with these guys. And so it's always kind of fascinating because I never want to pretend like I know who these people are because I really don't. I get the 6-minute version after a win or a loss or a Tuesday press conference or, the spring camp version of a guy. And you never quite really get the full extent. Like I probably have a better feeling for who individuals are as recruits than when they've been in the program for 3 years because they've changed a lot and I don't talk to them as much in that span. And so these videos do highlight their personalities and it lets you kind of see them as fully formed individuals, which is a shocking thought for some people. They're not just football playing robots. And so that is probably as big of a value as the thing has, is that it humanizes in a way that lets you know the guy that you're yelling at for fumbling the football probably feels worse than you do about it too.
You just freely said, hey, I don't want to pretend like I know these guys just because of the 6 minutes. When you say that, it's like, well, yeah, that's a good point. But do you realize how I think that is not the norm?
Yeah, it feels like we know them.
It feels like most people feel like they know these guys because of whatever, right? But like that was the first thing you said. It was like, you know what? I don't really know these guys. And I'm like, well, shoot, we don't really.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing that is wild about it is that you'll get, and especially on the message board, and I understand where it comes from. I do this with the Minnesota Vikings. I do this with the Cleveland Guardians. Like I'm not trying to say I'm above it. It's just a very different viewpoint that I have when it comes to Nebraska football. It's just you get snippets of who they are when they're playing. You get snippets of how the broadcast shows them. You get snippets of how the media talks about them. But you don't know what they're like on a Sunday at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Like it's just people are incredibly different when that camera isn't on their face and they're being asked questions. People are incredibly different when they're not having to respond to an emotional situation like a football game and coming off the high of a win or the low of a loss. Like it's just sometimes we're a little too confident that we know all of these individuals as fully formed people and we don't. And these things help, but like I said, they also control a little bit of the narrative too. So you don't know everything, but you know more than you did.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, so this is something that came out, I think, last week with the Bruce Feldman Freaks list from The Athletic. And Nebraska got two guys on there, Tommy Hill and Vince Genatone. What I wanted to ask you, though, is are there guys that you look at either from younger classes or that maybe haven't emerged yet that you look like as like, okay, these are guys that I think could kind of fit into that category at some point in their Nebraska careers where you're just kind of blown away with their physical gifts?
Well, I think the obvious two, and they're both young and they have to actually prove that it's beyond just their measurables. I mean, the obvious two are just people aren't generally built like Malachi Coleman and Carter Nelson. And so they would have opportunities to end up on that list. They have to go and do it, and they have to do it both from the athletic standpoint, and they need to do it from the football standpoint and all of those things. But they're two guys that, end up on there. I mean, there's a lot of athletic talent that you never really hear about, or you hear about in terms of the recruiting that maybe hasn't manifested itself into being the best version of a football player. But there's, for example, a guy like Henry Lutovsky, and I know this is a weird one to use, but just go with me.
No, I love it. Let's go.
This is a guy that can throw around, he can throw around a ton of weight in the weight room. But but then he also moves faster than you realize a human should at 320 pounds, whatever he is, and 6'6". Like the power speed index of some of these linemen, and Nebraska's not alone here, but like what some of these guys are capable of doing is sometimes jaw-dropping, and it's not necessarily indicative that they're going to be an amazing offensive lineman or defensive lineman. It just shows you how difficult it is to play those positions because of the type of people and the type of athletes. You know, it's easy to get enamored with wide receiver speed or, you know, the size or the jumping ability. Look inside the trenches, and there are some dudes in there that do things that seem like it defies physics. And Nebraska definitely has a couple of those guys. It's just you're not always going to see them or hear about them on a list like that. But they can do some incredibly athletically gifted things that should not be coming out of 6'6", 325 pounds.
I don't have any numbers on this guy, just from the little bit that I saw him at practice, and from like, I feel like Keona Davis is like a weirdly explosive kind of freak show that we may see. Maybe it makes the list, maybe he doesn't. But that's a guy that I thought of. I was like, he kind of seems like a freak.
My favorite thing about Keona Davis is it's not like Nebraska set out to get him. It just sort of worked in their favor because Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington. They have these scholarships available. They had talked to him in the spring. They make the phone call. And then now we're talking about a guy who, in one of the deepest positions, could potentially, and it's probably unlikely, but could potentially play out of a red shirt because he has shown up and looks the way that he does and plays the way that he does. And it's kind of like Nebraska reached into their winter coat in January and pulled out a $20 bill. And that's sort of what Keona Davis feels like in recruiting terms, because this was not, I mean, they lost Carlin Jones the month before, and he's going to be really good, and that's going to hurt. But Keona Davis is a pretty nice backup plan that just kind of fell into your lap that you didn't even realize existed until it did.
Schaefer, when you're taking a look at, excuse me, kind of how Satterfield described their offense, you know, he was generic or general without being kind of general. I think he knows what he means when he says pro style, and they always want to have the ability to run the ball. As you're starting to like glean little glimpses of this offense, hear what Coach Sat and Coach Thomas and Coach Rule are saying, is there a position group that you think will be more important than we're actually thinking right now based on what you've heard lately?
Could I say the tight end?
I am 100% with you.
and not just because people are really excited about Thomas Fedoni, but because I think they like the different body types, and I think they like Nate Borkercher a lot, and I think they're going to play in a lot of, 12 personnel. I just think they're going to do stuff at the tight end position, and they're going to try, like they did this at South Carolina with Spencer Rattler. I mean, they can put 3 tight ends and use them in different ways, line them up in different spots, hide guys, move guys around, just kind of do different things at that tight end room. And it's not the one that you think of. Like we're predisposed to always want to talk about quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, and especially because it feels like this wide receiver group is really deep and really talented, and I'm very high on it. But I think the tight end room sort of gets lost in the factor outside of Thomas Fedoni.
Agreed.
But I think they have some guys that Nebraska's a little excited about, and they can probably find different ways to utilize and maybe hide them a little bit in the offense. You get so worried about covering all the receivers or being worried about the running back, you let the backup tight end or the second string, third string tight end, or whatever the formation is, sneak out on you. I think they're going to be able to attack in that manner.
Where does Luke Lindemeyer fit into that equation for you? I know it's a guy DB's really high on.
So I think he is one of those guys that's bigger inside the walls over there than what we realize outside. How that manifests itself in terms of offensive production, I don't look for him to catch like a bunch of passes. But is he someone that could be critical for when they want to line it up and run it? Yes. I think he's a big blocking tight end for him. I think the success that they found with Luke Lindemeyer made it a lot easier to go look at an Eric Ingwerson and be like, yeah, we want that. We need more.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how I would describe the impact that he's going to have, but he's going to play. And he's going to play more than people probably think that he will. And he's going to have a role that's probably more valuable to the people that understand what they're attempting to do than the rest of us at large. But I mean, even last year, you could tell they liked Luke Lindenmeyer a lot. He played a lot, and he's going to play a lot again. And I'm not looking for him to catch critical passes, but is he the guy that's helping clean up and sealing off the edge and providing the extra, emphasis in the run game? I wouldn't be surprised by that at all.
How about when he asked me, thought he was an NFL player?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you?
Schaefer, the reason I brought up Lindenmeyer was A, because he was in the episode last night, but B, like I wonder, as you described that situation of, kind of the second tight end maybe gets lost or whatever. I think of a guy like Lindenmeyer, where you just mentioned he's probably going to be mostly for like blocking, establishing the run game, things like that. But then he seems like a prime candidate to kind of get lost if you do run a play action or something like that. Like, is he dynamic enough in your mind to be able to fit that role where, hey, when you do decide to fake everybody out, like, he's going to be a problem?
I think it's going to be more about the timing of you've set it up, you change this group of plays together. You have everyone thinking one thing, and then you sneak it out another way. And whether that's this is kind of the tight end throwback play. I don't think he has to be the most explosive person in the world if you time it and you set it up well. So I wouldn't worry about that a lot. I don't think it's going to happen a ton, but it wouldn't surprise me if just like you sneak that third offensive lineman in as a tight end and suddenly he's catching the touchdown. In the NFL, they love to do this. The Lions love to do this as 2-point conversions and then not tell people that he's actually supposed to be tight end. So it's a possibility. Try to get my shot.
Hey, so Mike J, let me ask you. I get the sense, this isn't leading, but I get the sense some of the names that get dropped and we kind of we take it and we run, and I get the sense there's this young group that is right on the fringe, right? Could be in the secondary, could be in the tight end room, could be in the running back room. I'm a big Mekhi Nelson guy, but it may not be this year, right? I hear Quinn Clark and I think people think, ooh, but the bodies and the guys that Quinn Clark would have to jump, it's a lot. So you could still be on the come, but it seems like they're prepping for and I get it. This year is huge and we got to get this one in. And I'm certainly not being dismissive, but maybe we've got to take into account that they're giving us a precursor of what's to come, but maybe not yet.
I think the best way to sort of look at what you're talking about, and I agree, I think they have a deep roster. I think this is one of the deeper rosters I've covered, to be honest. And that goes all the way back to 2009 with Bo, when I first started covering football at Nebraska. The thing that stands out to me, guys, is how you can utilize those 4 games and still protect redshirts. Yeah. You can get guys in, and you can get value out of a Mekhi Nelson or an Amari Sanders or a Mario Buford or a Ian Flint. I'm just trying to think of different people that maybe we're not going to be talking about them as primary cogs of the 2024, great start to the Matt Rule era, but we're going to be talking about it as, man, it was pretty critical that guy got to be in that situation against Purdue that helped him in 2025. I see that a lot. I look at that secondary. Yeah. And I look at John Butler about knowing exactly what he likes and who he likes and how he's going to do things and who's going to be able to play for him. And I think that guy walked into a situation where they have 9 freshman defensive backs. And these guys are going to compete like hell, and the best players are going to emerge out of it. And they may not even need that best player or best couple players this year, except for certain situations or at certain times. And what a great thing that's going to be if those guys stick around and continue to develop, because they're going to get some of the fruits of 2024 while also also protecting eligibility on the back end, becoming better players because of it, and then having like a really nice runway into their spring of 2025. Like it's a really ideal setup for development over there right now.
Well, yeah, Schaefer, do you think that helps with retention too? Like there's always, like you kind of give guys a little bit of a nugget to keep them going and be like, hey, here are the things you need to work on. Here are the places you're good. You saw it for yourself without being like, oh, and now you're a sophomore, right? Like that. Go ahead.
Look how I stuck around from last year. I mean, so they're clearly have the mindset, or at least last year into this year, they had the mindset of, okay, I didn't get the opportunity to play as much, or this didn't quite go as I wanted, or whatever, but it's out there. And I like what we're doing, and I like what we're building. And when they talk about building the family and all of that, the idea is that it should be hard to leave your family. It should be hard to basically be like, well, you know, I don't know if I'm going to get as much playing time here as I would over there, but am I going to like it over there as much? Are they going to treat me as well? I'm going to get developed? Am I going to become the person I want to be? That's what makes it hard to leave. When we talk about retention, everyone wants to talk about NIL and playing time, and those are huge factors, obviously. But sometimes the environment and being comfortable and being where you know you're wanted and you're going to be treated well and you're going to be treated with respect, that is as big of a part of the retention. And you trust the people who are tasked with development. But the hardest part about the transfer portal for me is that you're just guessing the next place that you go to is going to be the one that's going to propel you into where you want to go. You don't really have that much information. You get to spend a weekend with them. You didn't really go through a full recruiting process. You're just guessing. And I think that's why the transfer portal is, you know, good in some places and can be really bad in others. I mean, you got to have the foundation or it's not going to work for anybody. See the state next door.
All right, my pragmatic friend, I need you to help me because this is what I think. So I'm giving you that ammo early. So feel free to tell me I'm all wet. I have convinced myself, because I believe it to be true, that I understand how important this year is, right? Everybody's pretty hype and the schedule's sweet. But, man, the way that I'm listening to these guys and I'm watching and I'm listening to us talk and, you know, you talk about the guys in the secondary or the receiving room or the tight end. Like, how amazing would it be to just have Nebraska have a minimal amount of success this year and then build, like, next year appears to be like this monster potential year. But I can say that without not, like, I want a ball this year. Like, listen, I want 8 wins. I want to be in a bowl game. You know what I mean? So, but the coach in me says I'm ramping up. I'm not ready for takeoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a conceivable thing.
Is that okay?
That's sort of the route that Rule took at Temple. That's the route he took at Baylor. He thinks he's a year further ahead. Maybe there's not Big Ten championship game in their future in 2024, but you set the foundation and you build the roster and you make it attractive for the portal people and the rest of the recruits. You're going in the right direction, right? I mean, what you painted is the picture that everybody wants, I think.
That's Mike Schaefer.
Without sacrificing 2024.
Well, yeah. Everyone's going for that 10-win number.
That's Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Thank you, Schaefer. We'll talk to you next week. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Speaking of Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, you can come hang out with us a week from Friday. It's almost here, guys. Our pregame.
Yeah, come hang out. I want people to come hang out.
I do want people to hang out.
It'd be nice just to have a party.
You know, we'll have we've got a little pregame live show August 30th before the UTEP game, presented by EP Foundation Repair right here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Go to eventbrite.com, search Hurrdat Sports to reserve your ticket. There's going to be a bunch of different breakfast options, and you can even get a little cocktail.
I need to, have folks get me off. I mean, we got a big one.
Yeah.
So I'll, of course, be wired. Nebraska plays the next day, and I got to work.
Yeah, because you guys are the night before, right?
Yeah.
You guys are 29th?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be We're hoping for a win. So we got good mood DB.
I just may need some folks to give me Simadonna.
Little Donna Summer, Simadonna.
Yeah, like that's the first thing that I thought of when we got the dates.
Yeah, you've got a lot of Thursday games this year.
I'm like,
Fridays are going to be interesting this year.
Damn it. That's Friday after North.
Yeah. That's going to be a fist fight too.
Oh yeah.
They're physical.
Oh yeah.
No, but so you asked Schaefer something interesting there.
Did I?
At the end about the record.
Well, what was that, Ravi?
About the about not wanting to sacrifice this year.
Yeah, because I don't want to come. I'm not pee-pee tucking. I'm just saying, like.
But you still think that the next year is kind of maybe more.
Yeah. So put it to you like this.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these guys that hears names mentioned in a presser and assumes anything.
Yeah, you're not like, oh, we better see him on the field this year.
Yeah, because I just done this long enough to know, like, guys are mentioned for a variety of reasons.
And one of the reasons,
a couple of weeks ago, it was Brett's, and a week before that, it was I can't remember who, Tarver or Charles
Shavers has been brought up
Shavers
several times,
Carter Nelson or Amari Sanders. Like, I'm just kind of and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, right? Like, I'm looking at the situations. I'm looking what has to happen, right? Like, I give you 5 DBs, right? I give you Buford. I give you Bly Hill. I give you Charles. I give you Amari Sanders, and I give you there's one more I'm missing. Tarver, Charles, Hill,
Sanders,
Buford, and Sanders.
Yeah,
that's 5.
You forgot Tarver the first time. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like, okay, 2 of these guys are kind of on the mend. They're getting back. Of those 5, I have to think in my head, okay, is anybody going to legitimately be in what I would call the 3rd corner up?
Yeah.
Or the 4th corner up?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
Like, if I hear Quinn Clark and Carter Nelson, I'm like, okay, who are they jumping?
Yeah, who are they taking snaps from?
So that's the way I gave the example of Caleb. I'm like, hey, I'm not I'm proud. Like, I'm fist bumping. Hey, you're in the 2 deep. Guess what?
Who you jumping?
Not good enough. Like,
who you taking snaps from?
And I don't mean to say that like a Richard head. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, my point in saying that is,
if you want to play this year, being in the 2 deep isn't.
Yeah, you need to be the next.
Yeah.
Up.
You need to be the 6th defensive back.
Right.
Like we talked about yesterday, right?
Yeah. You want to be in like the top 6 or 7. You don't want to be the second field safety.
Yeah, you don't want to be the second safety or the second rover.
Because if they don't trust that you can play
the 6th DB,
yeah, they will move somebody else.
Yeah, because if they think they're more prepared or more ready for the situation,
right,
then you'll get moved.
Right. If I'm the 6th best wide receiver and I'm not playing well, and they move Fedoni outside, they'll probably do that because they're more comfortable playing Bork and Lindenmeyer.
Yeah, than they are playing Quinn Clark or whoever the 5th or 6th guy would be, right?
Or no, give me a receiver.
Barney.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
Barney. Yeah, Barney.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah,
like that's how it works.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, well, we heard of Dowdell, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, I told you Dowdell's. We don't know why that's being said. They may actually be on the come. Yeah. It could be because they responded better than they thought they had. It could be because they've made gains. It could be because they like competition and you feel like you have a couple of guys there that we talk about a ton, and those guys need a carrot. Like I say all that to say, like, you just never know. But I get the sense these guys, all of them, for the most. Wait, I got to remember for generally speaking, for the most part, the aforementioned, I think, could be really good.
Yeah.
It may just not be
tomorrow, this year,
or in October.
Yeah. It may not be this year. It may not be 2024. Like Lindenmeyer is a really good example of this, right? You brought up the line in Chasing 3 where the coaches ask him, hey, do you think you're an NFL guy? And he's like, I don't know. Do you? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, okay, cool. Let's go be an NFL guy then.
All right.
That doesn't mean he's an NFL guy this year. He's a sophomore,
yeah.
Right? He's a redshirt sophomore. Like, you're talking about 2 years from now, is he an NFL guy? That's what Coach Rule's talking about. When he's talking about Danny Kaelin and Dylan Raiola being both NFL guys.
Yeah, so
he's not saying tomorrow.
Okay, great point. Great point. Because you know what I hope, and I shouldn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is just one of those things where I admit what I'm thinking,
Sure.
and it's probably. So when I say that, it's like, man, I got to protect these guys. Like, don't expect them to be Superman tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's not what he's saying.
No.
But that's not my job.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I don't feel like that.
For sure. Because you don't want unreasonable expectations put on these kids.
We just can't control ourselves. So I'm trying to insulate.
Yeah,
already.
you're trying to put kind of a buffer around it.
Yeah, but it's not healthy for me either, because sometimes it drives me wild. Like, it shouldn't have bothered me so much that we couldn't digest the chasing 3 thing
from last week.
What I felt like properly.
Right.
But it bugged me.
And full disclosure, I didn't know what you were mad about for like 3 days.
Because I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Because the way I processed it, because you got a lot more interaction with it from other people than I did. And so the way I processed it was just the way I processed most stuff from Coach Rule. Where it's like, oh, he's a teacher. This is a teaching moment. If he's allowing this to be out publicly, it's definitely not the first time they've heard it.
Yeah.
Like all these things, I'm like, okay, this isn't, I'm panicking because they actually can't play in front of people. What I'm thinking is, okay.
That was just a glimpse into playing at a high.
Yes.
Like,
you got to be the same person when no one's watching as when 1 million people are watching. That's a very common thing that people use as a teaching tool.
It's just not like, so then I look at it like, well, shoot, man, I need to be better. So that's why I asked Schaefer the question.
And here's
and it's not so hear my heart.
Yeah.
It's checks and balances, right? Like, I don't want to turn me over to me full time. I don't.
Need a regulator.
Well, I'm confident in critical thinking, but like sometimes I just like I want to be buoy. I want to buoy too, right? Like, is this nuts? Because it's just how my mind works.
I almost said this last week when we were out at the golf course, right?
Freezing shake your tail feathers?
Yes. But it's good Nelly song. From Bad Boys 2, baby.
Yeah, great music list on the way to Indy.
Yeah, you loved it. Big Elvis guy.
Yeah, Neil Diamond. Wow. What are you, 70?
Maybe. A lot of people in my life are, so that's fine. No, but so I almost brought this up when we were talking about like Citrus Bowl and like if you guaranteed this, would you take it, whatever. And part of me wanted to say, and we didn't get to it.
Before you say it, what kept you from saying it?
Because I was wondering, I was going to ask you if it was a loser mentality.
Okay.
Because there's a part of me that only wants 8 wins, not more. Because I'm afraid of what I'm afraid of.
Do tell.
I'm afraid of what a 10-win season would do to us.
Oh, stop.
No, I am.
Stop.
Not like you and me, but as a fan base, I'm concerned that we would look at it and be like, all right, it's all brakes are off at that point.
That is interesting.
Like, there's a part of me that's afraid that like I need a little bit more gradual climb than that, because going from 5 to 10, people will lose their minds going into that third year, right? Like, we would lose our minds. We'd be like, all right, playoff or bust. And like, I genuinely think people would get to that point, especially because if Nebraska's 10-2 in the Big Ten, they're in the playoff, most likely.
Yeah.
Can you imagine people in the playoff this year? Like, I don't know that we're ready for that. I want real, measurable progress. And that's what I feel like 8 wins is. I also need a couple moments where we pump the brakes for just a second.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to chew on that. I mean, I can appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. And I'm willing to admit that it might be a loser mentality. I get it.
I don't know if it's a loser mentality. It's, do you trust that the product is ready to embrace the expectations?
Yeah, and I don't know if the product is ready to replicate a 10-win year. That's what I don't know yet. I don't. I think we might be a couple years away from that. I don't know. We'll talk more here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla.
Shano, Ravi is over here getting blistered.
Not everybody's against me, but I
For sure, baby.
Listen, to recap, I said that 8 wins is the sweet spot for Nebraska this year. 8 to 9. I think 9 is okay.
Oh, now you're giving it. You gump.
I mean, listen, I don't think 9 changes much from 8. You get to 10, we're having a different conversation.
Shots fired by Amazing Daniel.
Because go ahead, read it. Read Amazing.
Only wanting 8 wins is the same quadrant as I hope we aren't so good that everybody tries to steal our coach. I don't know if it's a loser mentality, but it's ridiculous. Stop it.
I think they're different things.
Hey, Daniel is a fool.
So here's the thing. It's not about
shoot.
There's a couple different things that are at play here. One, I think a slow build is more sustainable. I always have believed that. I think slow builds are more sustainable. When you see teams just pop off and go from 0 to hero in like overnight, it always feels like a flash in the pan. I'm not saying it always is. That's how it always feels to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, as a state, we cannot handle 10 wins.
I don't know about that.
We are not emotionally prepared.
I don't know about that.
For 10 wins. Because imagine, and you brought it, you put it better than I could have.
What I did.
What I'm really saying here is Nebraska ready.
Yeah, you don't want to fast forward Nebraska being their own benchmark.
Yes, because if they're not ready for that as a program, it's going to be detrimental long term.
Let me give you the best case scenario.
Okay,
I understand,
and I get a coach would never say it. This is a fan thing.
I understand, right? You want to protect the commodity as long as you can.
And you have to worry about the disease of more. That's a real thing with players.
Okay.
And coaches.
Let me give you the best case scenario.
Okay.
If you want to sustain that, how many guys did I, right, like Sanders and Tarver and
you mentioned 5 DBs.
Lob, Quinn Clark, Carter Nelson.
Mm-hmm. Barney, we tossed out there as a freshman.
Although so the best case scenario to keep that from happening, and this isn't just fans, it's those guys only show you flashes of what's to come. So then the conversation turns into, man, they won X amount of games, and these young guys, they are chomping at the bit.
Yeah,
because that's what those guys will do. Because believe me, there's some guys that are looking and can't wait for guys to graduate. You know what I mean? Like, hey man,
hey, when's my turn? Let's go.
I love the fact you're the pace horse, but man, it'll be cool when you leave.
Yeah,
right.
You can go anytime.
That's a thing.
Yes,
but that's what you want. I couldn't wait. As good as Calvin took of me, I couldn't wait for him to get his ass out of Lincoln. Oh man, LP, you want to turn pro? Oh man, dang it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand that, but you want to keep that would be the best case scenario. But here's the deal. This is what I can't, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't understand what you're saying. Right? You just don't trust how we're going to handle success.
Yeah, because I've seen it before.
But that's part of the maturation process, though.
I trust that the coaching staff is mature enough. I don't know if as a fan base we are.
Can I tell you something? I'm tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Just so I know you're not crazy. So I had a conversation with Coach Frost, and he was talking about like the vision, and he said we had the conversation about like compromising early and not going with this kind of the slow burn. He's competitive, won to win now, recruited some guys that may not, you know what I mean?
Made some compromises.
And he said, short of catching lightning in a bottle, like we did at UCF, this is a long-term project.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, because catching lightning in a bottle for them would not have been good.
No.
Because it would not have been sustainable, because the roster wasn't prepared for sustainability. I
think we're close to that.
We're much, much, much closer, and you're with a staff that I think is prepared to play the long game.
Emotionally, I think they can handle it. And
so, you know what I mean?
Yes. I still think we're about a year away from the roster being where I would want it to be to take that
Oh,
jump.
yeah, I'm with you.
So that's kind of where I'm at too. Like there's a practical standpoint of it where
He told
what?
Daniel just can't say those kind of things.
He can say whatever he wants. It's Twitter, but I genuinely believe that we almost need that half step year of 8 or 9 wins before, because here's the problem.
It just sounds so particular.
It is, but listen,
just win.
I get that. And I'm not, listen, if they win 10 games, I'm going to be happier than anybody. Like, I'll be thrilled. But I also understand in this moment, you've got an opportunity to build it right and sustainably. And I think, I don't know
if they're ahead of schedule. Listen, I can't even get my mind around 10. So
I can look at the schedule. If they're who I think they are, I can look at the schedule and see 10 wins.
I'm not there.
But I don't think it's likely. It would be kind of a lightning in a bottle situation, even though I do think it's more sustainable than the way it's been built. I think if Nebraska wins 10 games this year, you have to be prepared for 8 or 9 the next year when maybe the schedule comes back to earth a little bit.
They wouldn't give it a second thought.
As a fan base, not as the coaching staff.
Okay.
The fan base has to be okay with, just because it was 10 this year and they made a surprise playoff run or whatever, right? Because that's what 10 means is, next year's 8 and we're in the Music City Bowl. Are we emotionally prepared for that? Because, no, that's a real question.
No, because I don't think you can think like that.
No, but that's how fans think. I get as a...
we may be selling them short.
I don't know. I've been around these people for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Your perspective on it's always going to be a little different.
Well,
it is.
So,
just from your context.
Okay, but let me give you something concrete, though.
Okay.
I have complete faith that we've learned our lesson from years past about living on,
I hope so.
I think we've learned.
Because we saw it with
Because
Bo.
the fan base is starting to turn over a little bit.
Yeah, it's getting younger. You're getting kind of new generation.
So I think staying in the moment is a little easier.
But because it's a younger fan base, do we not remember the lessons?
Yeah, I don't know.
So here's my concern. It's a very concrete example, right? You go from, what was last year under Pelini, 5-7? Or last year under Callahan, before Pelini.
Yeah.
5-7?
Yeah.
Then Bo goes out and wins 9 games the very next year. Wins 10 games the year after that. And there was no putting that genie back in the bottle.
I'll take it.
Once he got to 9 and 10 back-to-back years, it was like, okay, why can't we win a conference title?
Learned.
Why can't we make that next step? How come we went from 10 wins and we're back to 9 and we can't get to 11 or 12? Like, that was a real thing. Why can't we beat Wisconsin?
But
why can't
I kind of think we're misremembering. Do you know what I think it was?
What's that?
I think we thought we plateaued.
No, we did. That's what I mean, though. Like,
but that's different. That's different.
Okay.
That's because I think understanding that you're maximizing, that's what got him in trouble. It wasn't that this isn't good enough. It was.
Ooh. I don't know. I think you might be given a little more credit than.
I think Nebraska fans were not tired of, but the biggest criticisms were the predictive losses.
Yeah.
Like they just wanted
but it was because
a wrinkle, right?
Like
it didn't. I don't know if it was a number. I think it was that it was getting too predictable.
I think it was, and you can put it as not a number or the predictable losses, but I think it was Nebraska wasn't taking the next step to be that next level of program. So whether that's maybe the 10 wins look a little different or whatever, right? But you're not beating Ohio State. You're not beating the good teams. So I agree with you.
I think that was a lot of it.
No, but I mean, I think that also goes to the not taking that next step. Like Bo was never able to take that next step, but he got there so early. I think that worked against him.
Okay, so specifically, right? If
he had gone 7, 9, 10.
So I think it was how it looked. I do. I think it was a little sloppy sometimes.
By the end, I think it was how it looked.
I do. I think that was a lot of it. Maybe I'm misremembering.
I mean, let's get to a couple phone calls here. We got out of breath Brian wants to talk about
vintage RP fashion.
Just
the win total 7.5 for a reason.
Yeah,
Oh, he had jokes yesterday in the weekend too. So.
Let's get to Brian here and wants to talk about 8 wins. What's going on?
I ain't talking about no 8 wins. Talk about you. What you over here doing on the radio?
What's up? I'm talking. That's what I do for a living.
You talking silly over here, Rob. Come on, man. I just went across the bridge and put mine in. We ain't talking about no being happy with just no 8 wins. Frankly, I don't care about anybody's feelings or personal well-being if we get the 10 wins. I don't care. I got gray hairs on my face. I ain't got long to live on this earth.
Do you know how long we've been losing, Ravi?
Okay?
That's what you want to say, I'll be.
No, I know. I've been here.
I don't care what my neighbor think about no 10 wins. Go to sleep. I don't care. If it's 10, 11, 12, if they add an extra game to the season, I'll take that win too. Okay?
You know what Iowa tells fans that think that, oh man, you guys went undefeated 12-0, but you got blown out by, you know what Iowa fans will say? Don't care. Undefeated.
I want to win. And, that's what I wanted. One part of the reason I called Damon. But one of the things I wanted to say, hey, your Pittsburgh Steelers teach me lessons every year.
They're trash, right?
They teach me how to be thankful. I look over at that Prescott now after I looked at Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and man, I will take them. I would take him. I probably would take somebody off the median on the city.
My man can't even read an RPO. Like, what are we doing?
I said, hey, thank you for teaching me how to be thankful. That's what I'm thankful for, and I'll be thankful for 10 or more wins. And I wouldn't mind if somebody who's a plus 10,000 in the Heisman Trophy candidacy this year goes ahead and takes that too.
All right, I'm going to take lessons from the Cowboys fans about managing expectations and being good enough. I get it. Thank you, Brian. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by Brent Sobleski. He covers the NFL for Bleacher Report. Brent, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, getting ready for the season. Almost here, gentlemen. Actually, we have college ball this weekend.
Yeah,
with games that count.
Listen,
so it's an exciting time as always.
Can't wait. Brett, I hope this isn't low-hanging fruit, but I get we want players to be candid and to tell the truth, but I can't help but to go through Tua's last couple of days and the comments about Flores and I'm thinking to myself, I don't get the sense he helped himself any at the end of the day. How do you think peers or people in positions of leadership in the NFL will view that? Or does it really matter? Is it all about within the walls of that franchise?
I think a lot of it can range from people being, proud of Tua for coming out publicly of how he felt, because we know there would be others in the same position. And I can say for certain there are others around the league that just roll their eyes
right
at how that's received. And really, this is a testament, not necessarily of or an indictment of Brian Flores or Tua, but also how individuals learn, right? As we know for a long time, anyone that came up through the game, especially 70s, 80s, and 90s, negative reinforcement was how you played the game. Mm-hmm. If you messed up, you were going to find out real quick. It was almost like you had this living fear of failing your coach that really propelled you. And games change, obviously. The way we bring up young men in the game today is very, very different, far more positive. But there are still those coaches that are old school. So when you have certain players that don't react, it's not necessarily that one way is wrong compared to the other. It's just that their personalities don't mesh. And I think that's a perfect example in this instance.
Yeah, Brent, I think you bring up a really good point there. I think the initial reaction to it was kind of like, oh, Brian Flores is kind of a jerk or a bad guy or whatever. But I think there's some people that react well to that style of coaching, and Tua just didn't happen to be one of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of our most successful coaches of all time was Bill Parcells, and how many ex-players have joked about him never saying a nice thing to him ever during their entire career. Yeah. So it's almost a cultural shift in the way that we play football now, and it has to be to a degree because of the way things have evolved, right? now with NIL licensing deals and everything along those lines, you have to be more positive. You have to be more productive. You can't just be that old curmudgeon coach that everything has to be done your way, because then you won't be able to recruit young men that want to go somewhere where it can be positive and uplifting and fun. And so I think, to me, that's the biggest thing in this discussion. Not necessarily that Brian Flores is a bad guy. He just does it in an old school manner that a lot of people today aren't accustomed to because they weren't brought up as such.
God, that is so interesting. You have no idea. It's like 6 degrees of separation. On a side note, we just had our college coach, Coach Rule, release some information and this document that they're doing. And he was very candid with the players about winning close games. And he didn't come across as it wasn't a lot of rainbows and butterflies. And all of a sudden, our fan base was like, some of the fan base was like, oh gosh, Nebraska's in trouble. It's doom and gloom. And I'm like, no, like, this is just coach. Like, he's just putting it out there. It's amazing how there's like been this shift on how when we process information, it's not what was said, it's how it makes us feel. And like, there's a difference between the two.
Agreed. And one of the key terms, at least for me, and I've been in or around the game now. I'm 44 this year, so pretty much most of my life. Yeah. And there was always that term that was brought up, at least when I was younger, mental toughness, right? The reason you go through 2-a-days, the reason you put in all that hard work, the reason you spend all the time in the offseason is to build yourself up mentally and physically to be able to endure the rigors of what this game is. And the game is not easy. It is not. And so I understand that you want to take a step back and alleviate some of those pressures and anxieties. I fully understand that. But at the same time, there's a hardening and a callousing that has to occur throughout this entire process, throughout your career, to be prepared for the biggest moments. So just think about this a second. You mentioned that conversation. Well, let's take the juxtaposition of what Tua said compared to what Tom Brady said. Tom Brady was on the opposite side of the spectrum, and the way he laid into today's players and how they're not prepared and how they're not ready, and he was applauded. So which side of the argument are we supposed to really lean towards? And that's, you see what I'm saying here?
I can take it one step further. Nick Sirianni, who everybody has now vilified, because Jalen Hurts didn't respond to a presser the way that people were like, oh, it's mended. Sirianni owned it. He's like, look, this was on me. I'll get it figured out. I got to do this. I've got to do that. I can step away from this. And I'm like, gosh, that's pretty interesting for a head coach to come out and say he's candid. He was honest. He took ownership. And we can't wait to see how this thing turns out, because, well, is Jalen Hurts right? Is it like Sirianni tried it the way of just putting it out there and saying this is what happened, and that wasn't good enough either. We have our popcorn ready, like we're just ready for fisticuffs. It's like I don't right, like all of a sudden Sirianni's a bad guy Sirianni's a bad guy for telling the truth.
Let's be 100% honest. We're all in the media. We've all been dealt with this for a long time. Drama sells. It sells. It does. There's a reason why everyone watches 18 different Real Housewives. There's a reason why people are into The Bachelor and all that stuff. I don't watch that stuff personally because I love football. I want to see sports and activity and things along those lines. But it gets back to what I'm saying. It's a level of mental toughness. And what you just stated, I believe, is a sign of mental toughness and maturity, right? Thing in football is not that you can't mess up. It's once you mess up, to rectify that situation and not make that same mistake twice. And if you do go out there and own it, that's the most you can ask from a person in most cases. So I think that's why in a lot of cases, and I know I'm probably treading into deep waters here, something like Deshaun Watson was so problematic for so many people, right? I understand through a court of law, he can't come out publicly and say, yeah, I did it, so that everything that goes on that line. But at the same time, show a little bit of contrition, right? Mm-hmm. Show that you're trying to be a really changed human being, what everyone believes who you are. And to me, that when you do that, you will always garner favor from the fans and people in and around the league.
It's just interesting how after that whole, because I mean that dominated the NFL was with Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Who has the most pressure on them now? You got Brian Johnson. Like Hurts has gotten everything he's wanted, right? He's got like you better win because you have Kellen Moore. You seem to have cut out the middleman. Like you box it's like Tua. You box yourself in with results when you come out to the contrary like that, when somebody was trying to go first.
Yeah. And, especially for head coaches in the NFL, there's almost like a step-by-step process of when you're going to get fired. And by that, I mean, okay, you do really well. Everyone loves you. You take a step back. Okay, well, what do we do now? I fire one or both of my coordinators, so there goes my scapegoats. And then it's that third year, you're like, okay, now it's all on me. And that's kind of where they've reached in Philadelphia, because one thing we've learned over time, and this was a great example during the Chip Kelly era, the man that runs that franchise, Howie Roseman, he is the cornerstone of that franchise. So if things again fall apart, in which they absolutely did over the second half of last season, I know they technically made the postseason and then got ran by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But if that's the case, Super Bowl appearance or not, I don't see how Sirianni necessarily gets out of there, just because they've already made changes. You mentioned Kellen Moore. Vic Fangio is one of the greatest defensive coordinators in NFL history. You bring him in on that side of the ball. You have no excuses. They are gone.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, because we got into this conversation with quarterbacks and getting paid, and at the time, Trevor Lawrence was the first one to really get the big contract, and we had a couple of segments on Trevor Lawrence and being married to a quarterback. And I know it's Jacksonville, but describing what we've been talking about, and I look at a guy like Doug Peterson, right? Is there such a thing as pressure in Jacksonville as the head coach when you're connected to Trevor Lawrence the way that Peterson is?
I absolutely believe so.
Me too. And nobody talks about that. You know what I mean? And it's a winnable division.
I agree, because I think that division's fun, but it's fun but undecided, right? Because almost every one of those franchises in that division is basically in the same state, and by that I mean your very young quarterbacks are developing, and you need to see which one's going to become the alpha in the division, right? Is it going to be Trevor Lawrence? Is it going to be C.J. Stroud? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson, who with one of my bold predictions here, thought he could be MVP because he's so physically gifted. And then even the Tennessee Titans, let's not completely discount the Tennessee Titans. Here's Will Levis, who everyone thought was going to be a first-round pick last year, fell to the top pick of round 2, but they're building around him, the offensive line. You bring in the Callahans, which are huge hires. So if you continue to fail when you're expected to succeed in what's still a developing division overall, yes, you're better off than Urban Meyer, but I could be better as an NFL head coach than Urban Meyer. So that was a positive, but now you have to actually make strides, and that's where they failed a season ago. And if it doesn't occur this year, I agree with you that there should be pressure, because that entire franchise is now built around Trevor Lawrence. If you can't get the most out of him, we know how gifted he is, and you allow the Houston Texans essentially to leapfrog you, now you're in a bad position, and you're probably not going to continue the same way that you've been going the last few years.
We're talking with Brent Sobleski from the Bleacher Report. I'm glad we were talking about the Eagles there for a second, because I think a lot of people have them as a prime potential regression candidate because of the drama that they've seen, even though their roster is still pretty good. Who are some teams you're looking at as potential regression teams coming up this year?
First team that pops in mind is the Baltimore Ravens. Not because I think they're bad.
So. I'm a Steelers fan. I hope so.
Well, that's part of the reason, right? I'll give you a two-pronged reason why I think the Baltimore Ravens. One, I still believe Lamar Jackson's underrated, and I know it seems like madness considering he's a two-time NFL MVP, but he's just not valued the way other quarterbacks are. But you have the Cleveland Browns with that awesome defense. If you get anything out of Watson, just average quarterback play, that team is going to be just a bear to handle. The Pittsburgh Steelers, to your team, your squad, anything's better than what they had a quarterback last year. I don't care if it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. It's an improvement. Their defense is standout. You have weapons. You've built the offensive line. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, if you get Burrow for a full season, they can run away with that division. Now, with that said, the other reason I said Baltimore could be that regression candidate is because of their offensive line. People do not look at the trenches enough and place enough value on it. Yes, you have Jackson and Derrick Henry in the backfield, and that's nightmare fuel for defensive coordinators. But at the same time, you're replacing 3/5 of your starting offensive line. Your entire right side of your offensive line, which were veteran-laden guys, and Kevin Zeitler and Morgan Moses, are gone. and then you're also changing your left guard. So considering how heavily they rely on that offensive line, the physicality to be the tone setters, to make that type of change and having that type of uncertainty among that unit, I think can make you take at least a half step back in a division that's going to be an absolute dogfight.
So I almost throw the Bengals in there as well, because I've been saying this since February, where I get it, but I don't. Right? Orlando Brown Jr., another Brown on bookend. You got Kappas, Karras, and Volson coming off the wrist injury. I know Burrow's on a pitch count. He's supremely talented. Who knows what's going to happen with Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins is. I mean, he's playing for a contract, so I guess you get some incentive. It just probably won't be from the Bengals. But they lost Mixon. Like, why do the Bengals get the benefit of the doubt when they have similar questions like the Ravens, especially up front about protecting Burrow?
I think a lot of it is Burrow. Right?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I legitimately do, and the difference between him and Jackson is based on what how I'm looking at it is Jackson obviously has the implementation of the run game, which is why I lean so heavily on the offensive line, with being able not only to pass protect but also be that physical force. With the Cincinnati Bengals, yes, they literally have the biggest offensive line in football, and I'm talking gargantuan, even though Trent Brown's still uncertain for the regular season. Long as you allow Burrow to have some room to navigate the pocket, which he's one of the best I've ever seen do it, and he gets the ball out so quickly and smoothly, he helps offset it. He's one of those true, how I define a franchise quarterback, meaning he can elevate the talent around him. And I think that's a great example of how he does so. With what you're saying with losing Mixon, that's not a huge deal to me, because I think Zach Moss and Chase Brown are two talented backs. Don't forget, Zach Moss was second in the NFL in rushing last year until Jonathan Taylor became the starting back last year, coming back healthy. And I like some of the young wide receivers. I really do. After losing Tyler Boyd, you have Andre Yashavas and Jermaine Burton, who they drafted in this year's third round. Charlie.
Oh, we lose him? Okay, we'll try and get Brent back here in just a second. There's the Bengals are super interesting. I know we've talked about them a little bit in the past, and I'll ask Brent this when we get him back. But you've brought up a thing that I think is fair a lot with Burrow, and that's the amount of pressure that either should or shouldn't, or either is or isn't on him this year, right?
He does. He gets the benefit of the doubt.
He gets a pass.
I mean, and I you know what I think it is? Because he's 3-1 against Mahomes.
Yeah, he's about the only guy that's been able to.
I think that's what it is.
To climb that mountain and survive. Brent Sobleski rejoining us here from the Bleacher Report. Brent, wanted to stay on the Bengals here for a second, because we're talking about pressure, and I feel like there should be maybe a little bit more pressure on Joe Burrow. He obviously has had some injuries that have largely contributed to maybe not repeating the success of the Super Bowl run, but it does seem like he kind of gets a pass. Is that the same vibe that you get on Burrow?
To a degree, and again, I apologize. I was literally talking for like 2 more minutes, and before I realized you weren't on air anymore.
That's okay. It's all good.
I agree to an extent, because we're all assuming it's injury related, and we just are hoping for the best, right? Mm-hmm. You want to see him on the field. He's a top 3 to 5 quarterback, depending on what arguments you want to make. So in that regard, yes, I think really what makes him stand apart and helps him offset some of the question marks we have about the Bengals, specifically the O-line will be healthy. Trent Brown isn't currently, and their movement isn't great because they're literally the largest offensive line in football. But at the same time, he's one of the best at navigating the pocket I've ever seen, be able to work around pressure, find throwing lanes. And when he does so, he plays in rhythm and with a precision that is unparalleled in the NFL. So I think that's why we all hope for the best, even though 2 of his 4 seasons has ended on IR. So it's a question mark on whether he'll stay upright or not. Now, with that said, a couple of the things I had question marks that we mentioned before I lost your call. Joe Mixon, with him gone, don't forget Zach Moss was number 2 in the NFL in rushing before Jonathan Taylor re-entered the Colts lineup last year, right? They have good young wide receivers that they've drafted over the last 2 years to replace Tyler Boyd and Andre Yashavas and Charlie Jones, and then this year Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round. So I still think all the talent's there. It just makes sure that Burrow's healthy, and if he's healthy, he has a legitimate ability to elevate everyone around him.
Well, who's more closely connected to their quarterback? Because they're viewed differently nationally, and they're virtually the same coach in terms of accomplishments. Sean Payton with Nix and that quarterback triumvirate, or Mike McCarthy with Dak Prescott?
I will say McCarthy right now because of the situation, right? Because Dak has been so public about his contract, because they've allowed this negotiation to drag on as long as it has. Don't forget, last time he negotiating a new contract, it went to the last minute as well. That's just poor resource allocation by the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're the only team in the NFL that hasn't quite figured out how to work and massage the salary cap. Yeah, and then with McCarthy, because they keep falling short, despite being a really good team, but one and the other are going to go hand in hand with McCarthy being on the line. Now, conversely, with Peyton and Bo Nix, yes, they're going to be inextricably linked to one another because it was a selection everyone viewed as, hey, that's Sean Payton's guy. He fits the system. He may not be as talented as a 12th overall pick, but he's going to fit really well there. And so far, the early returns are, yeah, he looks really like a really good fit for Sean Payton's offense. Okay, I understand preseason, but I have the pleasure of writing a feature this year every week, updating the best rookie performances. And the top rookie so far this preseason has been Bo Nix. So I'm going to give them far more leeway and benefit of the doubt right now because of where they stand than the Dallas Cowboys, because of how potential festering that situation can get in not just in the short term, but throughout the entirety of the season.
Does it seem like Peyton gets a pass and McCarthy doesn't? Because the numbers would say there's not much difference.
Yes and no. I think part of it's due to how McCarthy kind of ended his time in Green Bay, where he kind of looked like the game had passed him by. And then furthermore, Jerry Jones compounded the situation by making a mockery of that head coaching search. I mean, if you guys rightly remember, there was two candidates. It was him and Marvin Lewis, and that was it. And Marvin Lewis never really had a shot at that job. It was always Mike McCarthy. So I think a lot of people that left a bad taste in their mouth. So looking at the way we do it, you need to be successful. You need to prove yourself. You need to show Jerry Jones that you were well worth the hire, and I don't think he's done that technically. Whereas Sean Payton, at least with the Denver Broncos, he came into an atrocious situation. Nathaniel Hackett was so over his head as an NFL head coach. He had to kind of weed out some of that from the previous year, work through it, move past Russ, get his guy in. So, yeah, he definitely has a lot more leeway in that regard than I think McCarthy does.
Brent, I want to ask you about Xavier Worthy with the Chiefs. How much of an impact do you think that actually has? Because I know it's something that fans talk a lot about, but in terms of actual offensive impact, how do you see that playing out?
Well, I want to take a step back in that question, because I want you guys to remember what the Kansas City Chiefs offense looked like with Tyreek Hill, right? Mm-hmm. As good as Patrick Mahomes is now, and he's proved everything he's ever done at every level, every step of the way. So I'm not trying to downplay what he is as a player. But 2 years ago, that offense, do you remember that quote Joe Burrow gave about Jamar Chase earlier in their careers? If nothing's open, F it, I'm throwing it deep and hoping Jamar's there. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs offense was for a period of time, right? Mm-hmm. They had those huge plays. They had that creativity. They have that ability with a quarterback that could make any throw imaginable, literally forward, backward, behind the back, whatever. He could do it all. And then you had the fastest guy in the NFL who could run away from everyone, which made them dynamic. Now, once Hill left, Mahomes became an even better quarterback overall because he started to work within the scheme more regularly. He started to become the guy that had to lead the wide receivers, not the other way around. And he showed more than capable of doing so, hence why back-to-back Super Bowl champion. But now you get that new version, that current version of Patrick Mahomes, the smarter, the more mature, but yet with all that creativity. And then again, bring in the fastest man in NFL Combine history. That is unfair. That is ridiculous. The NFL, I can't believe they let it happen. And I'm not saying Worthy is the same type of receiver as Hill. Hill is much stronger. He does it much better, especially in situations with contested balls. But just having that field tilting speed to really threaten defenses, and they can't drop a safety anywhere. They will consistently have to either play cloud coverages or try to get after Mahomes. It's going to change the complete dynamic of the Kansas City Chiefs again.
That's Brent Sobleski. He covers the NFL for Bleacher Report. Brent, great stuff. Hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Yes, sir.
Thanks,
you guys.
man. Appreciate it.
Coming up next, we're going to bet on it with our Warhorse Sportsbook Bet on It segment of the day. That's DBM Ravi Lulla. We'll be back next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's DB. We're here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and it's time for Bet on It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets, either at the Sportsbook in Lincoln or Omaha. You look like you're about to say Uruguay. It is the best place to go. Let's keep your money on the right side of the river. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. You can place your bets on nearly every major sporting event. DB,
what do you want?
This is gonna shock you. My bet on it is for the day.
Oh, Lord.
My bet on it.
Okay.
This is not a tangible thing, so I'm definitely gonna win.
Weird. Giving yourself a little waggle.
You know I like to wiggle. I guarantee, I bet on it, the Nebraska fan base cannot handle 10 wins in year 2. Cannot handle it. We are not emotionally prepared. Because listen, we talk about this all the time, right? Being able to handle success is a real thing.
It is.
We talk about it with players. We talk about it with coaches. We don't often talk about it with a fan base. It's been a long time since Nebraskans have had to deal with success. I don't think we're ready. I don't think we're prepared. And to be fair, part of it is a team thing for me too. I think there's going to be more teachable lessons out of an 8-win season than there is a 10-win season.
Yeah.
I think if you, especially as you've got a bunch of 6-year guys that are going to be moving on, that have been through the struggle, and you replace them with a bunch of young guys that haven't struggled nearly as much, I think you're in a position where that could lead guys to think like, oh, maybe my stuff don't stink. You know, now, if anybody can handle that, it's Coach Rule. I have all the confidence in the world. But the fan base is loud here sometimes. Things seep into impressionable ears. Nebraska fans cannot handle a 10-win season in year 2.
You're betting. That's your bet of the day.
That's my bet on it today.
Well, it would be really, really cool if we could put that to the test.
I would love to be wrong.
Yeah. I just want to win 10 once.
Yes. Like, I would love to be wrong, but
I'd like to win 8, Ravi.
I would love to win 8. Some would say that's the perfect number. Maybe 9. I could do 9.
Speaking of numbers.
Yeah, I like numbers.
Would you take 90% guaranteed rate?
On what?
An outcome. Would you wager on something that has happened 90% of the time?
Depends what my odds are, but yeah.
Okay, 90%.
No, but I mean like my payout odds.
Oh, gotcha. So 19 of the last 21 years.
Yes.
That means it's happened 90% of the time.
Yeah, that's a lot.
There is a team in the NFL that has gone from worst to first.
I see where you're going here.
I'd bet on it.
You're going to bet on a team going worst to first?
That a team will not.
Oh, you're zagging.
I'm going to go against the grain.
So
Would you like to know the candidates? And I already know who you think could pee in my Wheaties.
Patriots, Bengals, Titans.
Correct.
Chargers.
Correct.
Commanders.
Yes.
Bears.
Yes.
Panthers.
Yes.
Cardinals.
We know it's not going to be the Panthers.
There's literally only 2 teams that I think could do it.
You're going to tell me those 2 teams are the Chicago Bears?
Mm-mm.
Ooh, really?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So I know the easy one. That's the Bengals.
Yep.
All right. Who's team 2?
Chargers.
Not a chance.
There's a world, and listen, I mean, Kansas City was only 11-6 last year.
I understand, but you do realize Herbert will be on full display because he arguably has the worst wide receiving core in terms of productivity of any quarterback in the NFL.
In terms of productivity, yes.
He has
I don't know that it's a bad
the
room.
worst wide receiving room in the NFL in terms of productivity.
Correct.
Like, that's a real thing.
It is a real thing. I think if Herbert is the guy that we tend to think he is,
Now Cincinnati will
and
make the most sense.
So is Harbaugh. Then Chargers.
He's
going to
have to run the air out of that thing.
Yeah, and he wants to anyway.
Cincinnati would make the most sense, right? Because they had 9 wins. I mean, they're over 500. They're 9.
They're 9 wins. You get Burrow back.
Yeah.
You know, we heard Brent talk about
a lot of good teams in that division, though.
There are. That's the hardest. Whereas you look at the AFC West.
I thought you would maybe make a case for
the Bears.
Yep.
I could see it. I could.
Right, because Minnesota's a little wounded. We think Green Bay's on the come,
but I don't really know.
They have Bears have a really good roster.
Yeah, they do. Bears have a really
now they
good
would
roster.
have to jump the Lions,
who also have a really good roster.
But here's the thing, though, and maybe this is just me.
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem like the Lions are getting run?
Not really.
Because
they're as good as they were last year.
I asked my man Jay. I asked Johnny, and he's a Lions fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, trust me, as a Lions fan, I'm hearing a lot more about the Packers. Because remember, I was like,
yeah.
So
I think we talked to Cynthia about this too.
Maybe I can't call the Packers a dark horse, right? Because I think the Packers are going to be really good.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people think the Packers are going to be good.
Okay. I don't think maybe it's because Campbell is silly or whatever, but they were stomping a mud hole in the Niners for a while.
Yeah, they were. Then 49ers had to do some work to come back to get that one.
Yeah, that was the great Brock Purdy.
People forget.
Yeah, that was a nice first half he had, but he rallied.
He did. That's what matters.
Yep, I know. And believe me, there's zero tongue in cheek. Like I know what it's like. Sometimes you just have to find a way.
Yeah.
And so I'm.
And that's
cool with
probably
it.
the best thing about Brock Purdy is he finds a way.
But I'm gonna go outside of the 19 out of 21, which is a great trend. If that was anything else,
yeah, you're in.
I'd give me a piece of that.
Yeah.
I do not.
There's not a lot of candidates.
I do not think there will be a first or a worst
to first. You're betting on that?
Yes.
That's interesting. I do think the Bengals are your most likely candidate, but
they have the most teams to jump.
They do.
The most quality teams to jump.
They do, which makes it more challenging. But if Brent's right and the Ravens are your regression team, that helps. And when we've seen a healthy Burrow, he's been really good.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
I have him second in the league.
He's sensational.
Like I will take him over everybody except for Patrick Mahomes.
And I are on the same page.
Can I give you a 19 out of 21?
Yeah.
Traditionally, Packers 19 out of 21 years are usually the best in that division.
They have owned the division.
They've owned that forever.
They have. And I don't know if it's the Lions thing. It's just because they're the Lions. I think that might be part of it.
I don't know if we take Campbell seriously, but that roster is spectacular.
Really, really good roster. I think very highly of Jared Goff.
I think, and it's weird, isn't it? Because that's the same Jared Goff that had reached his ceiling with the Rams, and we were like, go.
Apparently, he had not reached his ceiling.
It's just like
it's also weird.
You like golf to get them to a Super Bowl potentially. You said yes, but not Hurts. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I do.
Because one guy's actually played in one and lost, and the other guy's actually played in one and lost.
Yeah,
and
it's an eyeball thing. I don't have a good reason.
Okay.
When I see it, I look at Goff and I think Goff's actually a really good example of what we were talking about earlier about kind of with Tua and the voice. Like you would think Sean McVay.
I did not respond well to Tua.
I didn't either.
I didn't.
But I also I'll give him credit for saying it.
Right. And maybe, like you said, coming off a hip injury and Flores the way that he is, maybe he just wasn't in a position to receive it.
Yeah. And I think both could be true at the same time, right? Like, could Flores have done better to meet him where he was at? Probably.
I just don't like when and not everybody wants to have their say so, but I'd like to hear what the players say.
Yeah. The other players?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think for Tua personally, obviously that wasn't the best situation. And part of that maybe is on Tua also, but that's really hard to tell. I will say, and we'll get to Jason here in just a second, I wonder if that's the case with Jared Goff, where you would think Sean McVay would be the perfect guy to reach your ceiling as a quarterback.
I'm a big McVay guy.
If his voice and your personality don't mesh well, like maybe he needs a Dan Campbell. Maybe he needs a guy that's, because there's certain people where if you're constantly kind of like giving them pointers or critiquing, it just gets in their head and it like they don't perform well. Whereas Dan Campbell, if it's just like a motivator, encourager, like maybe that's what Jared Goff needed to reach his ceiling. Let's get to Jason. He wants to comment on my bet on it, the 8 wins versus 10. Jason, what's going on, bud? Jason, you there?
Oh, did we lose Jason? Jason, are you there, bud?
I think
there he is. Jason, what's up, buddy?
Not much.
All right. What do we got?
Hey, guys, just want to say huge fan.
Appreciate it.
First time calling. Usually I have to listen to recordings on Spotify. Today I'm lucky enough to listen to you live and actually get a call in.
Bless your heart.
Just calling in about the 10 or 8 wins this season. First off, on the fan base, we're going to overreact over anything and everything. So if we win 10 this year or 8 this year, we're going to overreact. I mean, we overreact.
That's legit. That's a good point.
Champ.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, just think how bad we'd be if we sucked at the off season. I mean, our fans would freak out. The world would end if we were terrible at the off season. So I don't worry about the fans. But if we won 10 games this year, and I would be fine with it, just because I look at it as with NIL and conference realignment, I don't know how sustainable 10 wins every year really is.
Yeah, so you're going to get while the getting's good.
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that ain't bad. Hey, I kind of like it, man.
I get it.
8, he's right, though. 8, we would still lose our minds.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine if it's 10? Because then you're 8.
Knock it off.
No, because then you're not only is it double digits, but you're in the playoffs. Nebraska's not ready for that.
I'm Team Jason.
I'm team. Let's get to Cole Bair to talk about a little bit Northern Iowa football here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DBM Ravi Lulla. We're efforting Cole Bair to talk a little Northern Iowa football. In the meantime, from the comment section, Red Flag Rayola, Ravi must be a loser. I feel fine. I'm doing all right.
Oh, how about right? Hey, can we just start with getting to the season win total?
7.5. That's my 8. It's my 8 right there, you know?
Oh, out of breath, Brent. I'm not calling to talk to about 8. I'm calling to talk to you.
Listen.
I don't know if he heard your walk-off, though.
Probably not. I think we might have been off the air, but it's ironic, a Cowboys fan coming to talk to me about win expectations. It's a little much like Natalie and Bruley. It's a little too ironic.
That would be Alanis.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, she's on all the commercials.
Natalie
now.
and Bruley is torn.
Yes.
Not ironic.
Yeah.
That's my bad. Joining us now on the Hurrdat Hotline is Cole Bair. He is the program director and host of Cole and Company, also correspondent for the Cedar Rapids Gazette. What's up, Cole?
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. Cole, just getting inside the numbers. It's a program that I followed a while. It's the first broadcast that I did for BTN in 12 when they played Iowa. They had my man Joe Gans. There's, of course, the Trev Alberts being from that area, so we're all in on UNI. And so far, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, it's good that Nebraska's seeing some spread teams early. Because am I wrong? But this wide receiving core looks like it could be pretty good.
Yeah, it could be. They got a big hole to replace with the loss of Sam Schnee, who was not just a big play receiver for them the past couple of seasons, but also a security blanket at the same time. I mean, he was a back-to-back 1,000-yard wide receiver. I know he was in camp with the Titans. I don't know if he's been cut yet or not, but big shoes to fill there. But beyond that, yeah, they've got a bunch of guys that have just kind of been waiting their turn behind Schnee. Sergio Morency is the one who really looks like he's most poised to break out of Florida. Just a great athlete, about 6'2". It's a group that in this air raid offense that UNI is installing, it just seems like somebody's going to break out, and Morency looks like the one most poised to do it.
So how soon before, or maybe it's already been named, you decide on a quarterback spot? Because that's the key, especially with guys like Edwards in the backfield, right? Everything else seems to be coming around. How about the signal caller?
Yeah, so media day was last week, and Coach Farley all but named a starter. He said that Aiden Dunn, a redshirt junior from here in Iowa and Dubuque, is the front runner. I do know that they really like Jackson Daly, who's also a native Iowan, but had transferred in from Arkansas State. Daly is a lefty, but they're both kind of built the same, about 6 foot tall, 190, 200-pound quarterbacks. kind of like the guys that you're used to seeing if you go back over the years in the air raid offense, where whether it was Mike Leach or, one of his disciples coaching somewhere else, that they didn't necessarily always get the most talented physical quarterbacks in the scheme. It's just about getting that ball out on time and knowing what to do pre-snap in the scheme. So Aiden Dunn, being with the program for 3 years, I think that helps him. Even though it is a new offense, he's familiar with, just how the operation runs within the program. So I'm not surprised that he's the front runner at this point. And I would think that by now, even though Coach Farley hasn't unveiled it, he knows who his starter is.
So, Cole, as I'm kind of looking at the recent history of UNI, they've kind of been, I don't know if stuck in neutral is the right term. It seems like they've been having a hard time getting over that hump since about 2019. I know Coach Farley is a legend and been there forever. Where do you think the opportunities are for this team? I know you mentioned switching to that air raid, for them to be able to push past that kind of 500 range in this season and get to that next step of development.
Yeah, that's really tough because how competitive the Missouri Valley Football Conference
it's brutal
over the last decade. Yeah, it really is. And not only are South Dakota State and North Dakota State great programs in terms of the football they play, they've also done a great job raising money. They are lapping the field in the conference in terms of the resources that they have. UNI has become the program where 2 decades ago, it was kind of the class of the Valley in its younger years. Well, now everybody's caught up and then some. And UNI, spends annually among the bottom teams on its football program. But Coach Farley's just the coach to, make something out of nothing, basically. And they get good athletes in here consistently. He's adapted to the transfer portal phenomenon pretty well. And I think for this team, they're going to be good enough offensively.
Yeah.
The bones are there with the offensive line and some really talented running backs coming back. Coach Farley, known for defense, he's got to find a way to piece together a defense. They graduated 4 starters on the defensive line last year. That's a big hole to replace or, just find new guys who can be productive there. So it's really going to come down to, can Coach Farley kind of manufacture a defense that's going to be good enough to compete and go on the road and win games in a tough conference against a bunch of teams that are ranked in the preseason poll.
Yeah, Cole, you mentioned all those teams that are ranked and how difficult the Missouri Valley is. 6 of UNI's opponents are ranked in the top 25 preseason. 3 of those are ranked in the top 5. Kind of with that context, what is a reasonable expectation for the Panthers?
Yeah, I think that if they win 5 games this year, if they go 5-7, I think you could look at the schedule the way it lays out right now and go, that wasn't a bad season. Fans, of course, expect the playoffs, and rightfully so. But at the same time, they understand that the MVFC is good and only getting better. Then again, you talk about the Valley and you look at, say, for instance, the second Valley game on UNI's schedule. They go to South Dakota, who's ranked number 5. But UNI absolutely tore South Dakota a new one just 2 years ago at the Dakota Dome at their place. So, you can look on paper and see the numbers next to the name. But then again, like you guys know, in the Big Ten, any given Saturday, Northwestern can go to Michigan State and beat a Spartans team that at the time might be ranked 12th in the country. I mean,
yeah, they went bowling last year. People forget.
yeah, a lot of parity in the league. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at the rankings. They're going to change a lot, but deservedly so. All these teams are in the top 25.
Cole, interestingly enough, I coach at a high school that gets a ton of eyeballs. A lot of guys come recruit Power 5 on down, and we see you guys a ton. And I look at, and we were saying earlier, can't remember what the segue was. We were talking about how all of a sudden the Dakotas have gotten so good, right? South Dakota almost seemingly overnight is back. North Dakota recruits the area very well. If you're going to stay in a neighborhood in which you think, do you have to leapfrog, or can you shoot par and hold serve and be okay?
Well, I think I think what UNI has done a good job of recruiting wise in the Farley era is they do go down to Florida. You know, they will go down to Georgia or Texas and find talent, and they're able to do it on a shoestring budget somehow. That's kind of a, you know, I think a counterpunch to what the Dakota schools are doing. At the same time, to really kind of dig in on this, one thing that really helps these Dakota schools is reciprocity. They can recruit kids out of Iowa, and they don't have to pay out of tuition.
Interesting.
And that's not the case in Iowa. There is no reciprocity for UNI. And I've talked to Coach Farley about this in great detail, where that's a big deal, and it really helps those programs out. And frankly, I would say Iowa's border regents have, you know, kind of failed in this regard. So, you know, as much as UNI is trying to, you know, at the fringes, you know, they can get into Florida economically and recruit there, or Texas sometimes, and try to make up for it that way. At the same time, that's a steep hill to climb when you got some of your better competitors or best competitors that have that advantage of reciprocity.
Now, the schedule is daunting, but you have, and I know we can't fast forward, right, with Valpo and St. Thomas and Nebraska, but you do come back from Hawaii and get the bye before you have the conference game. Got to look at that as an advantage a little bit, considering the competition you'll maybe have come off of seeing before that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go, 7,000 miles west, a round trip anyways, and play Hawaii, you sure would like to have a bye week afterwards. So they did well as far as that's concerned on the schedule. That might be about one of the only things that's great about this schedule. It's incredible how difficult this schedule is. And, you know, I know people see that opener against Valpo, a non-scholarship team, and yeah, that's a game by all means they should win. But St. Thomas that next week,
sneaky,
they're also in the Pioneer League, but St. Thomas has a lot of money. They got a lot of talent that they bring on campus. That's not a gimme game.
We've seen what they've done to in basketball here in a hurry. So like, yeah. I get you with the fiscal. They have a good supply of money.
Yeah, they do. They're impressive, and they were in the Unidome a few years back, and I was really impressed with their coach when he spoke after the game. But yeah, I mean, you get that week off before South Dakota State, so Coach Farley he's kind of got a little Andy Reid in him. He's pretty gosh darn good coming off of a bye week, so he'll have something cooked up for South Dakota State. Who knows if it'll be enough? It's hard to think that it would, because South Dakota State's absolutely rolling as back-to-back champs.
That's Cole Bair. He's the program director and host of Cole & Company, also a writer for the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Cole, we appreciate your time, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Cole.
Sounds good. Pleasure to be with you guys.
That's the show for today. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.